people from, let's say, the Chinese people that I know, they don't talk about racism at all, almost at all. But then I hear other people sometimes say, hey, it's actually racist if you say long time no see, because that's making fun of Chinese accents or whatever, right?
I mean, let's be honest. Trump said that he would end the war the day he was elected, not the day he took office, but the day that he was actually elected president, which would have been back in November. So that didn't happen, right? And in a sense, I never really bought that. I mean, I was like, I think maybe it's possible.
Trump doesn't understand, in my mind, that Thomas Massie is the people, right? Trump is the people, but Thomas Massie actually is the people. And so Thomas Massie is the only person that I know that has actually ever called out AIPAC.
I like Donald Trump, but I recognize his weaknesses. He has a huge ego. He's bought and paid for by AIPAC in Israel, and I don't trust him to choose America over those issues. Number one, his ego. That's going to be the biggest thing always. He's going to choose that, number one. And number two, he's going to side with Israel. If the question is save money on the deficit or the debt, or to continue to funnel billions and billions of dollars to Israel, he's going to choose Israel 100% of the time. And I don't trust him on that matter. Thomas Massie, I don't have that concern.
It is World War III, and it is a fact that Trump is the first president I've ever seen in my life that has talked about war in a way that normal people talk about war, not psychopaths like Bush, Obama, etc. So we're going to jump into a couple news events today, guys. We wanted to go over the first 2 months of basically the absolute state of what Trump has done thus far. So we did have an administration change recently, and we're going to go over kind of what has gone down, what it was promised, what has been delivered. So got a couple of general things we're going to go over today, and I'm going to start listing them out here. We're going to go Ukraine ceasefire aid suspension. We got government spending bill. We got mass deportation. We got the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. We got Ross Ulbricht's pardon. We got U.S. aid reduction. We got the executive action surge. We got a lot of stuff we're going to go over today, guys. We're going to cover a lot. So just keep checking it out. Like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to get into it. So just jump right into it. Kicking it over to you. Let's start with the Ukraine ceasefire. I mean, it's really related to last week's episode. We did a lot on kind of the broader scope of what was going on in Ukraine, and
Yep.
This is a little bit of a perfect segue into that, because we do have we did just have that kind of overview and the context overview of that. So
Right.
Kicking it over to you, what do you know about the Ukraine ceasefire? What do you know about the absolute state of Ukraine as of today, which is I guess May? It's March 10th right now. So what do we know about March? Yeah, given that, what are we thinking?
Sure. So, we just did a whole episode on it, so luckily we don't have to do the whole history lesson again. But, obviously there was the blow up in the Oval Office, and after that, Trump basically started to play hardball with Zelensky, which I think needed to be done. He basically kicked him out of the office and then said, come back when you're ready for peace, right? And Zelensky's first reaction was to go to Europe and go to the European countries and beg them for the help, to replace the help that the United States was no longer providing, which of course didn't go too well. I mean, he got a few, dollars here and there. I think comically, the United Kingdom promised like 100 years of aid and it's just an insane, but it still is not even a fraction of what we were providing. So I think he realized that that's not going to happen. That's not really going to cut the mustard. It's not going to keep him afloat the way he needs. So he eventually came around, and we talked about that in the episode, but he really did capitulate in many ways. He issued like a tweet that was something of an apology, although he didn't really use the words "I apologize," but he did say like "I regret how it went" and stuff like that. But then I also saw it reported that he did privately apologize to Trump. So
Right.
I don't know. Obviously, we can't confirm if that's true or not, but that was what was reported. Then what happened is,
well, don't you know that everything that's reported is true? Didn't you know?
Well, I tend to believe, if something's read, especially if it's on the news, I tend to read it and just be like, obviously that's would never lie to me, So obviously, that's generally my principle. But
Right.
In this case, for whatever reason, my skepticism muscle kicked in. But yeah.
Right.
So Trump ended up, for whatever reason, either that wasn't satisfactory or whatever the case is, he ended up cutting things like intelligence sharing and probably more. I don't know. I think we stopped sending weapons. Who knows what we're sending? Here's the thing. Who freaking knows what the hell we're sending? We send them 1 million.
To be honest with you, it's impossible to know because we can't audit that stuff.
Exactly.
There's literally no audit been done on it. So it's like...
Yeah. The long and the short of it is the aid was stopped. We stopped sending so much crap to them. And Zelensky was floundering because of this. And Trump is trying to force a ceasefire, right? I mean, that's what he's been saying. That's the whole point of the meeting. That's why it went south, is because it's clear Zelensky is not really that interested in a ceasefire, and that's what Trump's goal is at this point. So He's playing hardball, and there's also negotiations. I mean, we have an envoy, as far as I know, we have an envoy in Moscow right now that's been trying to negotiate a peace agreement, and that's been going on for weeks. And so they're trying to work this out. Now, I did see, as we were researching this today, you said something about that maybe there was some drone strikes going
Yeah.
on in Ukraine.
Yeah,
What did
so
you hear about
I
that?
think that's important to talk about. And this was allegedly, this was last night. There was a drone strike in Moscow, and it was from Ukraine. So we don't know if that's, and this is where I don't know. I don't know if this is going to affect the ceasefire kind of negotiations, because if you say, hey, I'm cool with the ceasefire, and hey, like, yeah, that's cool, and I don't play cards. It's not cards. You know, you
Right,
make stuff like that,
right.
and then this happens. What does that? I mean, how do you react to that? I mean, it's like that could be a whole nother. We really have to. This is partially why the reason is like why the reason I don't like to react to news day of, day after,
Yeah,
is because you got to let stuff unfold and kind of see what's really on the other end of it, right? And I'll give
right.
a kind of an example that's not related to Ukraine, but it is related to this. In my version of it is that the Alec Baldwin situation. Alec Baldwin, when he kind of shot that guy on his scene or whatever, you know, everybody and their mother was making their little commentary about it. Oh, it was murder. He did it like this, that, and the other. He did it on
Right,
purpose, whatever,
right,
right? And to me, I'm just thinking there is zero reason to speculate about this, because there were 6 cameras rolling. There was 100 witnesses. The real version of events is going to come out.
yep,
We don't need to speculate, right?
yep,
So why waste my time on speculating what happened in Alec in that room? Maybe it's fun, gets clicks, I get it, but to me, I'm not that kind of person who thinks, hey, what happened there? When I know that
right,
what happened is going to come out, right? It's
right.
not like some JFK thing where that's never going to come out. It's 100 witnesses. It was on 5 cameras. So anyway, my point is with this situation, you get somebody that says, hey, there was a drone strike. Yeah, you know, maybe they start talking about it immediately, and I'm someone who says, how does this affect the ceasefire? Right. So it's kind of like,
Right.
let's wait a week. Let's see what happens. I don't really know. So
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, that's perfectly reasonable, and I fully agree with you. And here's the thing: even when you mentioned that story, my first thought, you know, this is very cynical. It's a pure opinion. I have nothing to back this up. My first thought on that is this is Zelensky made this up because he doesn't care about peace. So he's just inventing some story about Russia like preemptively violating whatever peace agreement ceasefire so that he can continue to
right.
warmonger, right? And again, I have no substance for that's purely I made that up, so don't it's not factual, but that's just my sense of it. I know he has. I mean, there's been weird situations in the past, like there was the situation with the dam. This was a couple of years ago that there was a big dam in Ukraine that was destroyed, and then there was like I think similar like drone strikes or bombs that were done near a nuclear facility in Ukraine. And in every situation, Russia's denying responsibility, and it also is always conveniently timed right when there's like momentum actually being made on peace agreements. You know, like so it's
Right.
to me, it's always like if Russia is in good faith negotiating peace, and it seems like they are, because again, the war is not good for Russia to continue. They want it to end. I mean, Russia could make more progress right now if they wanted to, but they're not. I said that before in our last episode. Russia is not waging their full strength. If they wanted to push further, they could. They could try, but they're not. They're basically keeping what they have, and that's the leverage that they're going to use to negotiate peace. So why would they then jeopardize their own negotiating position by immediately violate or preemptively violating the ceasefire or the peace agreement, whatever it is? So to me, it doesn't really make sense. So that, and this is again, this just fits that pattern with this whatever may have happened in the last few days. But I mean, I think more broadly, you know, because we kind of wanted this episode to be, we didn't really specifically say this, but I think what we're really doing is we're kind of going over the first couple months of like the Trump presidency and almost sort of giving a grade. I mean, we're not necessarily going to give a grade, but we're just sort of judging how things have gone. You know, like you and I think we both would admit that we support Trump. We like Trump. We like his message and his platform. We voted for him based on that. And how do we feel so far as just a couple of random guys, right? How does the progress measure up so far? Does it meet our expectations? Is it lagging
Right.
behind? Do we feel
Right.
misled? Now, on this particular issue with the Ukraine thing, I do feel that Trump has done quite a lot. All right, I feel like this is maybe the thing that he's been focusing on the hardest, and I actually think that matches up with the image that I had of him and the reason that I vote for him. Right, I voted for Trump because I felt like he was the guy who could stop the war. Biden was never going to stop the war. If Biden was involved, it would have been escalated by now. Who knows? We'd be in World War III, right? Because obviously Putin wouldn't expect us to negotiate peace, and we'd be sending more and more money to Ukraine. Now, at least with Trump in office, I have faith, however long it may take, however difficult it is, it's obviously a lot more difficult than he thought it was going to be. But I do believe that peace is on the horizon, that we're closer to it now than we were, let's say, 3 months ago, right? So in this respect, right, I do feel, at least in this particular issue, I feel like progress has been made. What would you say is
no,
your
and that's it's a very good point that you make. Is let's go through these line by line and say, hey, is this a good thing that Trump has done, and how does it match up with what he said he was going to do, and like how much of an impact does it matter?
Right.
And yeah, this is one of those things, and in fact, I guess we did start with it for a subconscious reason, because it is kind of, spoiler alert, one of the only good things he's really been doing, right?
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's this. It's Trump, Kamala Harris, right? You're looking at these two, because let's not even use Biden because he dropped out, right? So right, Trump versus Kamala Harris, and you have Trump, who has been saying things like, hey, I want to sit down with Putin and Zelensky in one room and say, hey, let's figure this out. Like the dad of two arguing sons, let's figure this out. And Trump has, maybe you may call that a naive understanding of, his critics will say that's a naive understanding of geopolitics. You can't just have two people sit down in a room and communicate. Well, why? As Dean would say, why not, right?
Yeah.
Like if you really look into this, why can't you have that situation, right?
Of course.
And Trump is a guy who, in my mind, just him being in office or in the conversation is now things can start to move without even him doing anything, because the policy of the Biden administration and I guess the Obama administration and I guess would have been the Kamala administration would have been business as usual insofar as zero communication with Putin, keep sending money to Zelensky, keep the war going, and yeah, again, you ask us who benefits from the war going on, right? Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this: do Ukrainians benefit from the war going on?
Definitely not. No way.
Do Russians benefit from the war going on?
Not really. Maybe more than the Ukrainians, but no, not really.
Do American citizens benefit from the war going on?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, so those three people, I guess from my perspective as an American, if you're not American, then you don't have to care about us. But for those three groups, if none of them are benefiting from the war going on, then why is it still going on, right?
Right. That's the question.
And then the logical conclusion obviously is there are CEOs of Lockheed Martin, James D. I'm going to name them. James D. Takelet Jr. There is Raytheon Technologies. That's Christopher Callio. We have Bay Systems, Charles Woodburn. So I'm going to start with that only. I'm not going to go too far into the list, but those three individuals do benefit from the war, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's unarguable. They're getting paid. The gentleman, the CEO of BlackRock, he's going to get. We have Larry Fink.
Right.
We'll edit that out. So the gentleman.
Just get the censor bar over your mouth. That's all we need.
Yeah. We have Redact. The CEO of Redacted is benefiting from this, right? So why I bring that up is because I really want you to be armed and dangerous, as Jake the Snake would say, to understand. Hey, let me just think for myself 2 seconds, right? I just think, is it as simple as sitting down in a room and saying, hey, can we get both these guys to kind of agree to terms and services? Well, it should be. And don't let anybody in your life say, it's not that simple. Don't let them say that, because it is that simple, right? It should be, right?
Yeah.
And now, oh, he's just making a small thing of war. It's war and this and that. I don't really care what your kind of opinion is and that you absorbed from CNN and NBC, whatever, because that's kind of reflective of what those three gentlemen that I listed previously about the CEOs. That's what they want you to say.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm going with this, right? And so the fact that I like the Trump angle on this is because he represents the kind of American people, in my view. Whereas, let's say you get a vote of, hey, let's poll 100 people. Let's poll 100 million people. So let's say out of 100 million citizens that can vote, how many of them would vote yes on a $100 billion package to send to Ukraine?
Of American citizens, probably. I want to have faith in my fellow citizens and say zero, but it wouldn't be zero. It would be close. It'd be maybe like 10%. I don't know.
So 10. We'll go 10%.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
How many of the 538 representatives voted yes on that kind of stuff for the last 4 years?
It's
above 90%. It's above 90%.
High.
We have, and this is going to segue us to the next story quite a bit. But we're not done here. But a gentleman named Thomas Massie is one of those guys who will vote no on that stuff. Right. Bernie would you think would vote no on that stuff, but he voted yes. So
not quite. Yeah,
it's kind of a disappointing situation. But the general situation is that if you understand this, like the reality of war and what have you, these people are not being. They're not these citizens, and you see videos of them being ripped off the street and conscripted. They don't want to. They don't want to be going to war.
No, I
So
mean nobody does.
you have
Right?
to sue for peace. You have to sue for peace, right?
Yeah, I mean, war is the worst possible thing that there is, especially in this era that we live in. I mean, so and another reason I think it's good we started with this, and as you said, this may be the one bright spot in the Trump administration so far, right? And here's the thing, it's not even done, so it's like to call it a bright spot is maybe being a little charitable because it still isn't really done. I mean, let's be honest. Trump said that he would end the war the day he was elected, not the day he took office, but the day that he was actually elected president, which would have been back in November. So
Yeah.
that didn't happen, right? And in a sense, I never really bought that. I mean, I was like, I think maybe it's possible. Like we'll see how much leverage we really have over Zelensky, right? And we obviously have a lot. We have a substantial amount. I mean, and enough in my view to get the peace done. But I thought, hey, maybe it's possible. We have so much leverage over Zelensky that literally day one he makes a phone call and it's over. I thought that was possible. Not the case. Didn't work out. Fine. Now he gets elected. Now he's actually in office. Maybe now we have enough leverage. Clearly not. I think Zelensky, and I think we've pointed to this. We did said it in the last episode, and I pointed this out before. Zelensky is so bullheaded. He's such a stubborn asshole, right? That I think that even if we do have enough leverage at this point, he'll still drag it out. He'll still drag his freaking feet, simply because he can't leave power. I mean, he has nothing else going for him in his entire life. This is it. Just being president of Ukraine.
No, and I like that you brought that quote up because when he said that multiple times, I will end the Ukraine and Russia war on day one as president-elect.
Right.
Okay, as president-elect.
Right.
When he said that, I'm thinking, as I know who Trump is, and I'm not going to be one of those guys who says, let me defend every single thing Trump says, but I'm going to defend this. So what he means by that, and I know this, is that what you're doing, anything at all, is infinitely more than zero, right? Because zero is what Biden does. Actually, arguably, it's not zero because it's negative. So it's a negative integer.
Right.
So it's actually negative. So if you so what you're doing is it's not infinitely more, but it's okay. It's infinitely more than what Biden will ever do on this because his stance is no, I'm not going to talk to him,
right?
Because he's going to make the paychecks of Lockheed go away.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So it's like that's Biden's unapologetic thing, and the only thing he said that was true ever was I destroyed Nord Stream 2. We can get it done. That's to his credit, he did that and he admitted it. But even the media has tried to blame that on Putin, which is very absurd. It's absurd that I had friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, saying I can't believe Putin blew up his own pipeline. And I'm like, I don't believe that either.
Yeah, why would you believe that? Why would anybody believe that? Yeah, absolutely.
They told me that, and I said, can you believe it's not butter?
Yeah,
that's whatever. That's a small thing. That's a whatever, right? But I cannot believe, and I do not believe.
I don't.
That Putin would false flag himself like that. That's insane.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I don't believe that. Yeah. So yeah, my ultimate point was basically that this to me is the most important issue, maybe in the world. Maybe there's nothing bigger than this because, as Trump said in the Oval Office, you're gambling with World War III. That's what we're gambling here. We're gambling with the lives of almost everybody on this planet. We're dealing with a world war in this day and age with nuclear weapons could be the end of humanity, right? I mean, it's the worst possible thing that could happen. The fact that we have somebody in the Oval Office who is actively trying to turn down the temperature, to me, is the greatest victory. And I think I never said this publicly because we weren't doing the podcast back then, but I've said to you, there are two things that I want from Trump. Number one is a de-escalation. I want this war over and us to be much further from this nuclear World War III than we are. That's the number one thing, because that affects every single person on this earth, and it could get me killed personally, right? Like my life is on the line in an abstract sort of a few degrees removed from this, but it is, and so is yours and everybody's. So that was number one. Number two was immigration, and we're going to talk about immigration. But basically my point was before I voted for Donald Trump, I was like, these two things matter the most to me, and I guarantee you Kamala will not help. In fact, she's going to make either one much worse. So the fact that I do believe that there is progress being made towards a peace, that the temperature is decreasing, that at least we're talking, there is dialogue going on. We have Trump and Putin seem to be on decent terms, as good of terms as the countries, the presidents of these two countries can possibly be on. They seem to be there, which is great. That's what you want. I know people are going to be upset about that because we're supposed to hate everybody. We're supposed to hate Vladimir Putin. We're supposed to hate Xi Jinping. Yeah, sure. Dislike them all you want. Disagree with them all you want. Criticize them all you want. Absolutely. We're in America. Do everything you want to do on that respect. But you need to understand, you need to respect the power that they hold. They have nuclear weapons. They have large armies. They control huge swaths of land and people. And if you want to escalate a conflict with people like this, you're gambling with World War III, as Donald Trump would say. All right. That's all I'm going to say on that. In this particular aspect, I'll give Trump a pretty good grade. I think that he's done well, and I'm optimistic that in the next few weeks or months, we could finally get a stop to this fighting, and in which case we'll revisit it. And if it's continuing on, I'll have to come back and maybe revise that opinion. But at least as of this very moment, I'm pretty happy with that situation. I think progress has been made.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I definitely agree. And as and again, it's some progress, and it's the thing is, and I'm going to keep hanging on this a little bit because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
It is World War III, and it is a fact that Trump is the first president I've ever seen in my life that has talked about war in a way that normal people talk about war, not psychopaths like Bush, right, Obama, etc. Obama is somebody who could literally, they always say, oh, don't play video games because you're going to end up doing a Columbine situation, right? Mm-hmm. Obama literally is somebody who did a Columbine situation. He could just do a drone strike from his computer. He literally didn't do that, but that's kind of his administration pushed that stuff. Yeah. And that's inhumane, that's psychopathic, that's etc. Right? They're all psychopaths.
Yep.
But you got Trump coming in, and everyone's calling him Nazi, calling him Hitler, etc. But he kind of is the most human-like president that I've ever seen in my lifetime, right? Absolutely. To a point where I've heard, the way he talks about war, he says millions of people are going to get killed. He mentions that a lot. He says, I don't want these people to get killed. This is crazy. A lot of people are going to get killed over this. Whereas the Obamas, the neocons of the world, they just don't care. They don't say that stuff. So I never heard it in those words, right?
Right.
So it's weird and refreshing to hear that. And yeah, I already think that that's, pro peace, which I am, right? Pro peace.
Yes.
So it's kind of I don't care about your top lines. I don't care about your top lines, but like Lockheed Martin, I care about like you said. I don't want to go to World War III. So it's
yeah.
And I think the reason I want to hang on this one more thing on this is that I actually did think it would have been doable within first month of president-elect, because I didn't understand the extent of Zelensky's warmongering, bloodthirsty psychopathy, right?
Right.
So it's you underlined that to me a little bit. Let me give you a little bit more time to kind of elaborate one more time on that. Just if you could go just a little bit on why he's.
Yeah, so I'd say the major point on that, just if you don't listen to anything else I have to say, just understand one thing. Zelensky has repeatedly said, and even probably recently, but I don't know, but he's repeatedly said that the only way that he will negotiate peace and negotiate with Russia is if Vladimir Putin is out of office, right? Now, he did one other thing to add to that. He said that he will resign if Ukraine is let into NATO, right? So here's two things I want you to understand. Each of those is impossible, okay? Each of those is literally the reason that the war is going on. Okay, from Ukraine's perspective, they hate Vladimir Putin, and he's starting the war, and that's their main grievance is that Vladimir Putin is the leader of Russia, right? And so it's by saying the only way we're going to negotiate peace is by getting Putin out, is the same thing as saying the only way we'll negotiate peace is if we win the war, right? And another way to put it is we'll never negotiate peace, right? Because Vladimir Putin is not going anywhere. So and now the thing with NATO is exactly the same thing. Russia invaded to prevent Ukraine from entering NATO. Okay, so by saying I will resign and give up my power and let you guys negotiate peace if we win the war, right? Exactly the same. Right. It's another way of putting it, right? So I want you to understand something, that if you listen to Zelensky and you think he's reasonable, if you listen to these demands and you think, look, he does care. He doesn't even care about power. He doesn't want power. He's willing to sacrifice himself for the good of his country. What a great man. If you listen to that, you're an idiot. You're an actual idiot. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand that what he's doing is he's pretending to be reasonable. He's acting as though he has a genuine interest in negotiating a peace or a settlement, but he's throwing out impossible things, impossible standards to meet, to fool people like you. All right.
He does. Drop a comment, Neil, if you're watching. I want to hear your rebuttal to this.
Please do try to rebut this, because I think you're completely unreasonable if you listen to Zelensky and you think that if you just believe what he's saying, then you're you're somebody who can easily just be manipulated, and you're being manipulated
Right.
by a sociopath. That's what's going on.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what's going on with that.
No, and I like what you said earlier about how it's people's narrative is, oh, Putin's evil. I hate the guy, right?
Right.
And that makes me, it reminds me of kind of an interview that was given to, I believe it was a Chinese domesticate, like one of those Chinese ministers of basically a diplomat from China, and he was being pushed by a Western media kind of outlet saying, hey, how come you guys haven't condemned Russia for invading Ukraine? How come we haven't condemned them? Will you? It's like kind of when Piers Morgan brings on 100 people to ask them if they condemn Hamas and they go home. How come you haven't condemned Russia? And he just looks at her and kind of says, if condemnation ended the war, yeah, we would. Don't be so naive. Yeah, we would condemn it if we knew that ended the war, but that doesn't do anything. And so that's why I respect that guy and that whole mindset of, hey, why are we doing this whole fake? This is fake media, fake news, fake everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just I really resonated with that quote. I'm like, yeah, don't be so naive. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna solve the war in a podcast.
We're gonna try though. Yeah.
As Bill Burr would say to
Yeah.
Bill Maher, he's
Yeah.
it was really funny. But no, and one more thing I want to ask you actually.
Yeah.
Did you notice that when in 2021 2021 when this started, or was it actually was it 2022?
2021. Yeah.
Okay, when this war started, how come the first line of media from all the they're all in lockstep, but they were not saying, quote, Ukraine has a right to defend themselves. However, when Gaza, the November 11th or November 7th
October
situation,
7th. Yeah.
Thank you. October 7th situation occurred. Every single news media in lockstep would just say the thing, Israel has the right to defend itself. They were all saying that.
Yep.
Why is that? Why was it so different in rhetoric? What's going on with that?
Well, it's clearly because Israel is our greatest ally. That's why.
Okay.
Israel is our greatest ally, and we love them, and they're our good friends, and they would never do anything to hurt us. And all the money that we give them is going to a good cause, and we should be giving it to them. And that's why it's a good place. And
I understand the sarcasm there, and I do want to double click on that a little bit, because I think you're right, and it's that we didn't say that about Ukraine, quote unquote, because the media wanted to say, hey, let's not get so attached to it, because we can't just say, hey, let's spread democracy in Ukraine, because spoiler alert, Ukraine's not a democracy, right? So it's like that can easily be double clicked on and investigated and say, well, hang on, there's neo-Nazis in Ukraine, going on over here in power. Hang on a minute, they're not allowed to be Christians in some parts of this area. Hang on a minute, we're not. Right. Zelensky's no longer even voted in. He's a dictator. So let's just use different verbiage. Let's just send them money without even saying they have the right to defend themselves. Whereas Israel's more of a democracy and they can kind of defend that.
Okay, so the next thing we should talk about is this continuing resolution, and you may or may not have heard of this. I mean, depending on how plugged in you are to the news cycle. I mean, I think this is a pretty big deal, and we'll explain why. But basically, in the last few days, the House passed what's called a continuing resolution to the budget. Okay, so important civics lesson if you don't know. Congress controls the budget. That's who controls where the money gets sent, how much we're going to tax. That's why they're the most powerful branch of government, because they have this control. So typically, what's supposed to happen is Congress votes on a actual budget, a full budget. So they come together, they have their arguments, they have their debates. People propose things. We should fund this. We should fund that. We should tax this much. And they have a whole debate. It takes a long time, and then they vote on a real, actual budget for that fiscal year. And that's typically how it's done. Now, another option they have, and they use a lot, very frequently, is what's called a continuing resolution. So instead of voting on a whole new budget, like from scratch, they'll vote to continue whatever the previous budget was. Okay. Now, the reason that they do this is because obviously we have a ton of gridlock in Congress. So they often don't agree. One party who's in control of the presidency may not have control of either house of Congress. So it's very difficult for them to get the budget that they actually want. And in order to avoid the government shutting down, which is literally what happens if there's no budget, the government cannot operate. So it stops. The federal government just stops working. So in order to avoid that, they'll pass a continuing resolution occasionally. It's supposed to be occasional, but really it happens quite a lot lately. And that's what happened the last few days. So the budget was up for vote, and rather than try to fashion a whole new budget from scratch, Trump's strategy, and Trump is the leader of the Republican Party now, so it's basically his call. Trump's strategy was, give me a continuing resolution so that we can continue the work we're doing, specifically with DOGE, which again we're going to talk about in more depth a little later, but particularly to keep DOGE operational, to keep the federal government operational so that I can continue to pursue my goals in the early days of this presidency. We're going to kick the can down the road. We're going to negotiate a real budget later on, and for now, just give me a continuing resolution of Biden's budget. So that's the important thing to understand here. What was just passed again through the House is the budget that Joe Biden and the Democrats negotiated when they had power last year. So there's been a stink about this because there's one particular member of the House we're going to zero in on. His name is Thomas Massie. And in my opinion, I think is maybe one of the few members, or maybe even the only member of Congress that I actually have trust in, right? I actually like Thomas Massie. I believe that now he may be a bit of an idealist, and we can criticize him on that respect a little bit later, but he is honest. He's one of the few congressional members who is not beholden to Israel or the AIPAC lobby, and he is opposed to this bill for kind of the reasons I just laid out. Basically, he thinks that instead of kicking the can down the road another several months, we should take this opportunity right now, negotiate a new budget, deal with the deficit and the debt that we're incurring that's just absolutely expanding at just ridiculous rates, that this has gone on long enough and we have the control of the houses and of the presidency, so why don't we do it now? That's Thomas Massie's opinion. He voted against the continuing resolution, and now he's in Donald Trump's crosshairs. So Trump basically truthed about this, but I'll let you pick it up from here. So that's kind of the situation. But how has Trump been critical of Massie, and why, and what's going on with that exactly?
No, and it's a good question. So, and I like the way you overviewed that, and I think it's a good top-down explanation. But for me, it's the wrong fight to pick for many reasons, and there's a lot of analogs to what Trump said in the truth. And I'm going to go over. I'm actually just going to read what he said because I do have it pulled up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Trump went on Truth Social and said, "Hey, I'm going to put up," like you said, he's going to talk about Thomas Massie. He initially started out by saying, "Hey, we passed this glorious bill. You know, not the Freedom Caucus. You know, the House Freedom Caucus passed it. You know, passed the bill." But then he goes on and says, "You know, Thomas Massie," and I'm just going to quote, "is a automatic no vote on just about anything, despite the fact that he has already voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primaried," in all caps and Trump caps, "and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight." So, to me, and he went on and said more stuff, but it doesn't matter. For me, Trump doesn't understand in my mind that Thomas Massie is the people, right? Mm-hmm. Trump is the people, but Thomas Massie actually is the people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so Thomas Massie is the only person I know that has actually ever called out AIPAC.
Yeah.
And that's something that's ubiquitous amongst the House and the Senate, is these people kind of bought and paid for by AIPAC, right? So it's and they openly brag about this. If you go to AIPAC's Twitter, they say, "Hey, 100% of the people that we've donated to have won their elections this year." Like, they'll talk about that in open. They'll brag about that.
Yep.
And you may ask what AIPAC is, and I can encourage you to do your own research on that. So that's AIPAC. But anyway, so Thomas Massie in my mind is kind of like the Joe Rogan of this other analogy, right? So we'll go over to this. Joe Rogan very tacitly said something akin to, "Hey, I like RFK. I'd vote for him." I don't even know if he said he'd vote for him. He just said, "I like RFK. I like his ideas. He's a great. He's got really good ideas, and I like the guy a lot." Trump then, 10 hours later, what have you, probably saw some blurb of it, maybe a clip, and immediately gets rambled up just like he did about Massie. Goes all caps and enters the wrong domain in my mind, and says something to the effect of, next time there's a UFC event, Trump, Joe Rogan's gonna get booed, and again, he doesn't understand that people go to UFC for Rogan and for Dana White, not for Trump. That's a bonus that he's there, but they don't care that those guys are more loyal to Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan's a person who represents the people,
right? And
that's what Trump is in respect to, relative to other politicians. That's what Trump is too. But you got to remember, he's still in that 80-year-old range, and he's still a little out of touch with kind of most of us, right? So he's picking the wrong fight here in my mind. He should have handled this in a more masculine way and said something to the effect of, hey, we had to do this. It's unfortunate, but this is what we had to do, and we're gonna work on the budget like I promised we'd do, but 3 months from now we'll do it, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, Thomas Massie voted no. He's one of the only guys who could actually stand up and say no to that, and I get that. But we know, hey, when 3 months from now we'll readdress it.
Yeah.
However, I see why he doesn't do that. He probably doesn't want to encourage other people to be no votes and grandstanding in his mind, right? So it's like my whole situation on this is that Thomas Massie is the only Republican that voted no on it, right? And there was only one Democrat that voted no, and his name was Jared Golden. I don't know who he is. He's the second. He's the representative of the second district of Maine. So why this is a question to me, and this is what I'll kick over to you in a more philosophical kind of question about this is it really possible for pretty much 100% of Democrats to agree that this bill was bad, and pretty much 100% of Republicans to agree that it was good?
Right.
Like, how likely is that the case? That if you, in good faith, had all of them read every word of the bill, that it just coincidentally happens to be the case that 100% of them minus one, so 99.99, said no, and 99.99 of the other party said yes.
Right. Well, the odds of that are zero. The odds of that are 0%. So it's a good point that you brought up, because it clearly illustrates, and really you could point to any bill, probably almost any bill, but especially when it comes to budget bills, that the good faith that is assumed when we send like elected representatives to Congress from every single state, and then like every single like city or county or whatever, when we send these representatives, the good faith assumption is that they're going to vote based on what they think is right, and they're going to take into account their own personal philosophy, but that they're going to also take into account the constituents that live in their areas, and that they're going to use that as the principle, as the foundation of what am I voting for? Is this good or bad? Yes or no, right? Now, what really happens, and this should be no secret, no surprise to anybody, but what really happens is that they vote in lockstep with the power structure that they're entrenched in. So the Democrats vote with Democrats, and it's not like, they come, every single one of them just comes to the conclusion, they think about it like, what do the foundational liberal principles, if I apply these to this the text of this bill, does this seem to match up with my overarching philosophy that got me elected by the people, and so therefore I happen to agree because it's just a liberal bill and we all just happen to have the same ideology? Nothing to do with that at all. They get a call from who's the Democrat leader of the House. Would it be Pelosi? Yeah, it's Pelosi, right? They get a call from.
She's no longer the speaker. I think it's.
Well, she's not the speaker, but she should still be probably the Democrat leader. But
yeah, I see.
Yeah, but so they get a call from Nancy Pelosi, and she tells them how they're going to vote. Right. That's what happens. Right. She says, "Hey, yeah, we're voting no on this one," and the guy says, "Why?" But she's already hung up. Right. That's what's going on. And the same is true for the Republicans. Like, don't make no mistake. They get a call from probably not Donald Trump, but somebody in his office gives them a call. Hey, we're voting yes on this CR. And the guy asks why, and the person's already hung up, right? And it doesn't matter why. The why is not relevant. The point is that they're entrenched in a power structure, and it's really two kings doing battle. The Democrats are doing what they possibly can to impede Trump, to stop him from enacting his agenda. Think of this. Think of the irony of the situation. This is the same budget that the Democrats themselves proposed and passed a few months ago. It's the same one, and that's why Thomas Massie is opposed to it. That's exactly why he doesn't want it. And
he would have known it 3 months ago.
Yes, but now, because Donald Trump is the one who wants to utilize this budget to pass his goals, now every Democrat, the same party that proposed the bill originally, is now voting no on it, simply because the opposing party is maybe going to benefit from it in some way or another, right? So obviously it's ridiculous. But getting back to Trump, because I think you made a great point. This is not a good fight to pick, right? And I think it's for the reasons that we're talking about here, right? Thomas Massie, I think if you want to make one criticism of him, and I think it's legitimate, but not that I necessarily agree with it, but I think it's a legitimate criticism, is that he is an ideologue. He's idealistic, okay? He has his principles, and he's going to stick to them, right? And in my view, that's a good thing. I think it's good. I think if every congressperson actually had principles, that actually had an ideology, and they got elected on that ideology and they pursued that ideology, I think we'd probably live in a healthier democracy. We'd have more accurate representatives of the American people. So in short, if everybody was like Thomas Massie, I think it'd be good if every representative was like Thomas Massie. But what happens when you're one idealist in a sea of sycophants? what you're really doing is you're kind of holding up, you're kind of muddying up the system. You're kind of throwing gunk into the gears there, right? And I think that's why Trump, charitably, this is why Trump is upset with Massie, because Trump sees himself as the guy, and he is the guy. He's the guy who got elected. He's the guy whose agenda the American people want to see enacted. And Trump's position on this anyway is, listen, and you kind of articulated this better than Trump has, unfortunately. I wish Trump would have articulated it this way. But Trump's position is, this is not really the best thing. We don't want this budget. This is not like the budget we would have chosen for ourselves, but I need it right now. I need it to continue the momentum of what I'm doing. And in order to keep my agenda going and to do the things I need to do for the American people that they elected me to do, I need this budget right now, okay? And now he has said that we're going to get a real budget in the future. Who knows if that's true or not, but that's what he said. But, if he had come out and articulated it in exactly that way, I think this would not be an issue. Now, as it stands, because Thomas Massie is very popular, not just in Kentucky, but everywhere. I mean, because of the reasons we've explained. Thomas Massie is somebody who sticks to his principles, who actually does what he thinks is right. And so people like that. And that's the same reason why on the left you see like Bernie Sanders is popular. Bernie Sanders stands up to the Democrats now and then. All right, not that often, not as often as maybe he used to or maybe he should. But every once in a while, he's the voice of dissent, right? And that's why people like him, because they know that, hey, there may be an issue that he disagrees with the party apparatus on, and he's going to come out and he's going to be honest about it. Thomas Massie shares that same kind of popularity. And for Donald Trump to not understand that although, yes, he is the number one guy, he's the guy in charge, that Thomas Massie is also very popular, and he's popular with a portion of your base that you can't afford to alienate. That's like the intellectual aspect of your base. The people who are actually plugged in, who are like, I was going to say woke, but I don't mean woke. I mean like
no, but the old version of woke.
Yeah, the old yes, the
awake
people
to the
awake
issues, right?
Yes, that are actually locked in, that actually know the truth of what's going on. Those people who do support Trump, like I would put you and I in that category. We like Thomas Massie more than we like Donald Trump. Fact. I would pick Thomas Massie over Donald Trump 100 times out of 100. And this is somebody I like Donald Trump, but I recognize his weaknesses. He has a huge ego. He's beholden to, he's bought and paid for by AIPAC in Israel. And I don't trust him to choose America over those issues. Number one, his ego. That's going to be the biggest thing always. He's going to choose that, number one. And number two, he's going to side with Israel. If the question is, save money on the deficit or the debt, or to continue to funnel billions and billions of dollars to Israel, he's going to choose Israel 100% of the time, right? And I don't trust him on that matter.
Right,
Thomas
and
Massie,
I'm 100%. I'm 100% with you on that, and I think what you said about Massie, it's kind of ridiculous that Trump says and thinks that he could primary Massie, because Massie will win a primary. I don't think there's anybody that will beat Massie in Kentucky, and here's the issue: Massie is, and you said, hey, he's an idealist, etc. But you laid out the groundwork of the hypothetical, like the rational consumer aspect of the charitable, let's say somebody who actually represents the people, right? And they're doing their due diligence and they're saying, hey, this is what I actually believe. I don't care DR, etc. I care, is this a good bill, right? Massie is he proved that he's the only one besides Jared
Golden,
whatever his name was. Jared Golden, right?
Golden.
So shout out to Jared Golden, whoever the hell you are.
Yeah.
So besides Jared Golden, Thomas Massie was literally the only person that didn't say that was willing to stand up against his tribe and say, "Hey, I'm not voting yes on this just because Orange Man said it so, right? I'm not going to step in line with you guys." And you could argue that maybe he did that as a statement, but if you do that, you don't know Massie. He's been doing this for the whole time, right? He's just representing. He's doing his job. He's the only person in my mind that did his job that day, besides Jared Golden, and that is this. That is, hey, the people elected me to do something. What did they elect me to do? Okay, they want me to do things that I promised in my campaign. And what did I promise in my campaign in my primary? I promised, hey, I'm going to focus on America first. I'm going to focus on getting this budget down. I'm going to focus on not being beholden to the apex of the world, right?
Yep.
And to a point where he's, redacted, right? So now, in my mind, you go into things like Massie versus Trump, and like you said, 100 times out of 100 I'd vote Massie, but it's like this. It's like Thomas Massie is not just Thomas Massie. He's a symbol of something that I think is what we're not having, right? Like, we need good faith politicians. We need good faith actors. And since the system is so designed to not be set up for that, it's an oligarchy, it's this, that, and the other. when you see a bill that's split like this, you kind of think, okay, what's really going on? How many people have actually read the bill? Because and this isn't even as bad as the other side of the coin, where you see a bill where it's literally everybody on both sides agree with it. That's a warning. That's a red flag, right? That's what's going on. Why are we sending 100 billion to Ukraine again? And it's like, Massie is the kind of, he's been saying no to those bills too. So it's like,
right.
Why are more people not like this? I don't understand. Like, he's more reflective of the average person of the United States to me, right? That's where I'm going with it. And it's like, you can't really, you shouldn't be picking a fight with him. And I think it's a lot of an ego. It's like you said, he's not America first. He's ego first. He's Israel second, and then he's America third, really. Right. So it's like, that's better than Biden. Biden is just, Biden is, what do I eat for breakfast first? And then that's already at lunchtime. So I don't know what's going on with that. And then Obama's telling me what to do for third. And then APAC fourth. And then I think I did 2 tours in Vietnam with Xi Jinping at one point, right? So that's fifth. So it's kind of like, I don't really know. And then he beats Medicare for number 6. And then number 7 is America. So I get that, right? And then Hunter Biden below that. But it's just, I don't know where to go with this, because I'm just thinking, it depresses me to see that this is what's, is this what's going to happen for the next, in 3 months from now? In 3 months from now, are we just going to continue business as usual? Yeah,
it's a black pill. It is a black pill because, I mean, here's the thing. I didn't know that the budget was up for votes. I mean, until this happened, right? I don't pay that much attention to this. Who possibly has the time to know things like that? But I just see it as it happens. I see that, okay, they're supposed to vote on the budget and they're just going to do another CR. Right off the bat, I'm like, why? Why are we doing another CR? The whole point of electing you was to fix the damn budget, right? I mean, that's what you're doing with DOGE. That's why you're cutting USAID. So you're there. This is your chance. You have the control. You, Donald Trump, don't need to be elected again. So you don't need to worry about your popularity. Why aren't we using this opportunity to fight for a real budget that's going to actually cut the deficit? This is the time. Like, now is it. And that's what Massie's saying. That's what I'm saying. And it's just not happening, and the old tried and true, hey, just pass the CR and then we'll work on it in September, right? Will we? Like I'm sitting here like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm sure we will. Like, we'll see what happens. But I'm honestly, I don't have a lot of faith in that. And even if we do get a budget, I have a feeling if he's willing to give up the fight so early on, the budget we do get is going to be horseshit. It's going to be another horseshit budget. So, it's a black pill.
I am on board with you on that. It is a black pill, and I am going to take this as an opportunity to go on a small rant about money a little bit here, because a lot of you are thinking, hey, why does this matter to me, right? And that's a good question. A lot of this stuff doesn't matter, like, to anybody, because it's all just fake. It's all basically, this is the whole point of DOGE, which we're going to get into later, is that these government, they're actually just fake people. They're not real people.
Right.
They're not running anything, in my mind. They don't actually do anything. They are the gorillas in suits kind of archetype, right? Yeah. And why that's related to this is that, okay, this does affect you in a lot of ways. People hear that number, and I'll tell you, Thomas Massie said on an interview recently, hey, the CR is just going to, if they're accurate predictions of 2.5% of GDP per year for the next 10 years, if it's that, he says rosy kind of, basically, those are optimal predictions. He's saying, assume those are true, then we're still looking at a $20 trillion increase to the national debt over 10 years, right? And so but he thinks it's going to double over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And okay, so you ask, what does it matter? 56 trillion, 36 trillion, who cares? It's all trillions of dollars that no one has. How are we?
Right.
Why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters. When you are paid from, let's say you work at Walmart and you're paid, you're told that you're paid $20 an hour, right? But you look at your paycheck, you do the math. Okay, I worked 40 hours this week. I'm told I'm supposed to be paid $20 an hour. So what is that? So is that supposed to be, where's my check? Is it supposed to be $800 or is it, what's going on here? And then you say, okay, hold on. Oh, some of it goes to the federal government because it's income tax. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm taking like $680. Oh, some of it's going to Social Security. Okay, so I'm that six. Okay, some of it goes here and there and that and the other. Okay, so now I'm down to like, 70% of what I was supposed to be paid. Okay, that's not. I don't really like that. That's fine, but I'll take that money. So that's been taxed. So now I've got that money. I've got my money. I'm gonna go buy. Let me go buy a TV. So I buy a TV and then wait a minute. It says the price tag says $100. Why am I paying 108? Oh, that's sales tax. Oh, so the tax, but the money that I got was already taxed because it's money that I earned. That was originally at $20 an hour, but then it was taxed once, right? So now it's being taxed twice. Okay, so fine, that's okay. So they're taxing that more. And then let's say I want to sell this TV to somebody. I'm supposed to report that, right?
Right.
As income. If I sell the TV for $150, because I bought it for 100. I'm supposed to report that $50 as income. So then hold on, does that get added to the income? So how much does that go? This, that, and the other. Okay, let me invest some of my money real quick that I made because I do have a little bit left. So let me put some of that into the S&P. And then I've got capital gains. So let's see, how do I calculate that into the equation? Okay, that's fine. So then I turn 65 and I retire and I take Social Security checks that I've been paying into. Let's see what's going on with that. Wait, why is that being taxed? Oh, they're taxing it on both ends. So you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's you have your dollar is just it's just taxed and taxed and taxed, but that's not even the issue that we're talking about here. So this $1 trillion national debt, $56 trillion speculated national debt, does not mean this is another form of tax. This is basically saying kind of what we said a couple episodes ago. If you have 20 grand in your bank right now today, and then you go down 20 years from now and you just have it as 20 grand, it's not going to be worth the same purchasing power as it was today, right? In 20 years, it's not going to be worth a lot less. You're not going to be able to buy a car for 20 grand. Like, I don't even think you can today. When I was graduating high school, you could buy a Toyota Corolla brand new, like the newest. They always call it the 2011 version, even though it's 2009 or whatever.
Right.
Just like that whole thing was 20K basically. I knew that was my number. I was like, okay, if I want a brand new Corolla, it's 20K. Okay, right. So that's kind of what I knew. Right now, it's probably in the 30s. I think. I actually don't know. I think it's in the 30 to 35 range.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's what inflation is, and that's because of things like deficit spending, and because we're in such a high debt, and because of the printing, the endless printing of money.
Right.
And so, yeah, you have all this stuff. We're already taxing money. We're already taxing your money 9 times, and then we're inflating the money so that your money is being taxed in a different way. Right. So, yeah. This is the kind of stuff that causes revolutions. I'm not advocating for that, but this is what it causes. That's what happens, right? So it's like a famous quote.
Just to file that point a little bit, because Tony it's a great lesson Tony just gave you, and just one thing I want you to understand too is this. So the deficit and the debt, obviously two different things. The deficit refers to how much money per fiscal year that we're incurring towards the debt. So the debt is like the total number. But the deficit is how short we are every single year on actually meeting our obligations. So why does that lead to debt? So if we have a budget and we end up with a $2 trillion deficit, so we did not bring in enough tax revenue to cover our obligations, right, as a country, how do we make up for that? Well, we either print money, right, which happens, or we borrow money from other countries. So in either case, that's literally another tax, but it's a tax that that doesn't need to go into the budget, right? So the budget accounts for some certain amount of tax revenue that they're going to bring in, and they say, oh, that's your tax rate. Look, we're taxing you this percent. It's right here in the budget, We're taxing you this amount. And then you say to them, okay, sure, except this doesn't actually cover all the money you're going to owe. So where's that going to come from? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll handle that. You just close your eyes and cover your ears and don't worry about all that. And then they go and they tax you in like this secret way that they're not telling you about, where they just basically devalue the amount of money that you already have. So it's like the movie, they're drinking your milkshake, right? Like it's called drainage, Eli, right? The amount of money that you had is now worth less, but unbeknownst to you, nobody voted on that. Nobody decided to do that except the people who are in power.
Right.
And so anyway, I just want to point that out, that you're being taxed without knowing it. And so this is why this is so important. Everything Tony explained, and then the thing I just added, this is why the deficit and the budget matters a lot. Okay, these are ridiculous numbers. They're crazy numbers that they must seem like they're made up. They're pulled out of thin air, and they're so big that I think people lose perspective on it. That it just sort of becomes like, what even does that mean at this point? What we're dealing with $30 trillion? Like, what could that possibly mean to anybody? That's just a fake number, right? Well, in a way, yes. In a way, yeah, it is fake. You do have to care about it because it's you're being robbed. You're being robbed behind your back. So that's why.
No, it's like Joe Schmo says, "Well, I don't care about the national debt. What does that mean to me?" Well, it does matter to you, Joe Schmo. Yes. It does matter because every dollar that you buy your gold or your Bitcoin or whatever. I guess you could buy some Bitcoin, but every dollar you put into gold or whatever, it's no longer backed by the dollar's not backed by gold anymore, dude. You're Joe Schmo, rather, not Joe Biden, but Joe Schmo. Your dollar is not backed and secured. Yeah. It's backed and secured by fiat, by faith, right? So it's like, very well put with the deficit versus the debt. Kind of the distinction there, right? So that's good. It's good stuff there, and I think it's really a good question because people do ask, why does this doesn't really affect me, right?
Right.
And I encourage you to go to Cold Fusion's YouTube channel and search where does money come from, and we'll drop a link underneath the subscribe button. We'll drop a link for that. But that's a good video, and he overlays kind of really what Dean and I just talked about, and it does a little deep dive on it. I think he's one of those really informative kind of channels, so check that out. But it's really a big deal, and I think there is a quote from, I believe it was Henry Ford, I think at the time, saying that if every citizen woke up today and it was explained exactly how money works and how it comes from, there would be a revolution by noon. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's kind of a ridiculous thing where, I mean, why is everything taxed 30 or 40 times, right?
Yeah.
Is that because we need money to pay for the roads, or is it because the clowns that are in charge are fucking the budget up? Right? Pardon my French, but it's like we have this, and I'm going to use more French here. We can just redact it, but this kind of cocksuckery that's going on, if you will, to Trump. It's like, oh, I need to vote everything yes on what he says because Orange Man is God, basically, right? And it's like, you need to be like more like Massie, right? I think Massie's, you need to stand up.
Massie's the one guy who gives a shit about everything we just explained, right? That the fact that you're being robbed behind your back, that you're paying taxes that are fake, and then you're being robbed secretly. They're draining your account without you even knowing. And Massey's the one guy who's like, hey, we should stop doing that. Maybe we should try. Maybe we should let people keep their own money. Like they're going out and working. Maybe they have a right to maybe hold on to some of that. I don't know. Thomas Massie, crazy guy. Let's primary him for that crap. So
conspiracy theorist.
Exactly. What a fucking lunatic, you know.
Yeah, no, it really grinds my gears. But that's probably the worst offender of like everything else is whatever. But like that's the worst offender in my mind of. I guess actually no. The next thing we're about to talk about is another big disappointment, and that is mass deportation. So I mean, jumping right into it. I mean, we all know this. Everyone knows about the mandate for Trump as why he was electorally mandated, right? It was, hey, I'm running on two things. I'm not Joe Biden. My name is not Joe Biden. And also number two is I'm going to deport all of these criminals, all these illegal criminals immediately day one. Day zero. Days -5. I'm like, it's done. It's done, right? And we have a trend here. We have things that were promised on day one, not delivered. And this is one of those things. So what did he promise in the campaign, and what are we really getting, right, with that? So over to you.
So this is definitely a big one. If the previous two issues were forgivable, I think this one is really close to being unforgivable. I think it's been a disaster. Basically, Trump. There's a couple quotes that I'll read you. Okay, number one, he said we'll deport 10 to 20 million illegals, the largest in history, and that was in October 2024, according to MSN. Okay, and then in November 2024, he says, day one, we start with 15 million, no excuses. Okay, now he's referring to illegal immigrants, so criminal aliens, not just aliens, period, but apparently criminal aliens. How is that distinction made? Not exactly sure, because if you're here, if you cross the border illegally, you're automatically a criminal. So what's the point of adding illegal? I don't really know, but
they double speak. Sorry to cut you off. They double speak that with it's a civil. One is a civil thing, and the other thing is actually like a criminal offense. Yeah. So if you commit like a felony or whatever, like that's a criminal thing. But if you just cross the border, that's more of a civil. Okay. It's a crime, but that's how they're double speaking it. So
Okay.
But
even that is horseshit to me. But I get it. So anyway, I don't even know the exact number of illegals. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think it's possible to know the actual number of illegal immigrants that we have in this country right now. 10 to 20 million would not cover it. I'll tell you that much. That's not the whole number. There's more illegal aliens in the United States right now than 10 to 20 million. That's for sure. However, at least that would be a huge dent, right? That would at least be a massive dent if within the next 4 years we can deport 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants. Well, since Trump has taken office, according to data from ICE, and they haven't exactly, I don't think they've actually reported their real numbers. So this is they were doing it at first. At the first few days, I think the first few weeks of the campaign, they were literally posting on X every single day, like we arrested this many. They were doing that. They stopped because I think they were getting pushback. They were getting heat because the numbers were so small. It was just like a few hundred every single day. And people were like, what are you doing? This is not enough. And so they eventually gave up and they stopped. But anyway, apparently as of March 12th, we're looking at about 50,000 deportations, right? Which is pathetic, okay? Over an entire year, that is, what is that, 600,000, right? Over an entire year. And that's assuming that they keep up this pace, they don't ramp up, they don't slow down, okay? Over 4 years, what would that be? A little over 2 million, okay?
2.4 million.
2.4 million. That's not even close. He said 10. He said 15 million, no excuses. On the high
Day
end,
one.
he said yes.
He said day one.
Yeah, and I don't know what that's impossible. He wasn't going to afford 15 million people in one day, but I don't know exactly what. But I assume he means that was his goal. Starting day one, they were going to get working on beyond that pace. We're so far from that it's not even funny. 2.4 million is a joke. It's actually fucking pathetic. Like I'm and to be charitable, border crossings are down, so we've actually secured the border. So that is one thing good. The numbers are not increasing at the rate that they once were, which is definitely a big win. But the fact is we have like something like 30 million plus illegal immigrants in this country. And it's the same question we just talked about. You want to know where your money's going? You want to know everything's so fucking expensive? Because you're competing with 30 million immigrants who work for like less than minimum wage, do bullshit jobs. Housing is more expensive because of that. Food is more expensive because of that. They're using services, so your entitlements are getting screwed up. Everything is worse because of this situation. They have to go. They have to be deported. It needs to be like an effort that we've never seen before. I'll tell you this. Before Trump took office, I knew, and this may come, if they manage to ramp up, expect this news story from the Democrats. They will cover this like it's the Holocaust. Okay, they will say those words. They will say exactly those words, that this is the new Holocaust. They'll have images of ICE agents going into the elementary school and taking Pablito out of the ESL class and putting him on a bus with his dad and sending him back to Guatemala. They're gonna, and he'll be crying, and the ICE agents will be like wearing bulletproof vests. It's gonna look really scary. And it's going to be heart-wrenching for all the people watching. I'll be like, yes, illegal immigrants, deport them, get them out of this country, right? But anyway, that's the story that's going to come. They're going to treat this like it's the Holocaust. I was looking forward to that. Not because it's a smear. It's not what's really going on. But I was looking forward to the Democrat overreaction to what's happening. Yeah. I was looking forward to this thing like, man, they're making so much progress that the Democrats, all they can do is stoke people's emotions and get people upset. I was looking forward to seeing them. We haven't seen that at all. It's not even like the Democrats are kind of like ignoring it, because they know it's like he's done nothing. And if you want to know if Trump's deportations have been effective, that's how you'll know. I promise you, that's how you'll know. That's when those stories.
Well, he'd be talking about it a lot more too. Right. He'd be bragging about it every time. Yeah. And I think to be a little bit not charitable. Let me Steelman first. Okay. Let's suppose that this problem is solved exponentially rather than linearly. So if it is, then yeah, we're on track, right? Because then it's 50,000, then 100,000, then we're doubling that to 200,000, then 40. See where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Let's assume that that's how it works.
Yes.
Just like that's not how it works in my mind, but that's the case. So that if that's true, then you have to think, okay, why would that be the case? Is it because of like some kind of structures that are in place, and like you have to kind of make a system to actually get and sort of wrangle up, if you want to use the Democrat terminology, kind of wrangle up the illegals and then get them out? Like, is there a process that needs to be just kind of learned and stuff? It's like, I don't believe that's the case, because we have a process for that already. Like, we already know how to do that. But yeah, so that's and they haven't even said this. This is just me being ultra charitable, ultra Steelmanny. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
So that being said, let's just knock that down, because I don't think that's the case. What's really going on here is, I think, a little bit of effort's being put into this, but not as much as which was promised, which was campaigned on, right?
Right.
And so I don't know about, because you mentioned entitlements, right? So I live in the People's Republic of California. So when I pay for health insurance, which I'm mandated to pay for, it's a private good. I have to pay for it. So I don't understand how it's a private good, but I'm going to call it a public good. I pay for health insurance, a public good, and what I pay into, the premiums of that will go up based on the number of people who need health insurance, and that doesn't matter if you're a citizen, not citizen, brown, white, black, pink, etc. Like it does not matter.
Yeah.
And so this affects me on some level. This affects everybody who lives here on some level. So it's like, it's not something that's just as simple as, oh, the crime rates are going up, or, oh, like you just said, the jobs that are not reported on, so they're able to, you're not able to compete with these folks. And you asked me, the response of the left wing is, hey, why don't you have more compassion for these people? Like, we have to be a safe haven to accept everybody from everybody all over the world, so that we can harbor any kind of what's that term for people that are seeking asylum, and we need to harbor all those folks and be a safe haven for freedom and the American dream, etc.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, does that pass the not test?
Nope. Does not.
Right.
It does not it does not pass the not test. No.
Right. Is there anybody on the planet that would say the converse of that and with proudly? Hey, nobody should have to live in a country that is corrupt and not fair, you know?
Right.
And like their life would no one's life should be bad. Is that
right? I'd
that
say that's
controversial?
that's a tough one, but yeah, that's probably uncontroversial to most people, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's their playbook. They try to pull your
Yeah.
your strings of compassion and empathy,
Yeah.
and then you end up you get the folks that are so. And here's the thing, and we're tied into red pill ideology here. It works on 51% of the population. It actually works on them by default, and then for the other 49%, it works on them if they've been sort of low T, or if you will, right? If they're double digit nanogram per deciliter testosterone, it works on them too.
Yes.
So now we've got 60 or maybe 70% of the population that works on. So now we have California over the last 40 years has gone to majority. I don't even know if you see what I'm saying? Majority
non-masculine.
Native California issue. We'll call it that. So it's like now we're in a situation where the culture is shifting in California to a point where it's no longer California from 1848, right? That's where it started. Right. And now and I get it. You want progress? I get that. But now we're 2025 and we have people leaving California to, we have Meta headquarters going to Tennessee because they know it's like, that's where we got to be. It's better for the values of the country. It's in the middle of the country, right? So it's like, I mean, I'm not surprised by that. And I've got my opinions on this, that, and the other, but it's more about what was promised and what was delivered. And this was definitely promises not delivered, right? Promises promises given and promises not kept, if you will.
Yeah, and to steelman Trump and ICE a little bit here, the excuse they're using is that they're still ramping up. So apparently they are training like 1,000 new agents. I don't know how much, like as a percentage, what kind of increase that represents according to relative to their initial staff. But they're saying that they are ramping up. That these numbers are. I mean, I don't know if they've actually admitted that these are low numbers. They are low numbers, but I don't know if they've come out and admitted that. But they're saying that they're going to try to increase these. So, like you said, I mean, charitably, maybe this does become like a sort of more exponential type of increase. In which case, great. I'll eat my words. I'm simply looking at the situation we have right now, and if you ask me right now, today, March 12th, not good enough. Not even close to good enough. Like it's not close, and I'm unhappy with it because this was the second most important issue that I voted for Donald Trump on. I think if we can control the border, we have done, and I've given him credit for that already, so good. But control the border and get illegal immigrants deported from this country, and then also have a more peaceful world. If those two things are the only thing Donald Trump did in 4 years, if that's the only two things he did, I would have considered it a successful presidency. I would have been happy with my vote. Okay, so the fact that this isn't being done to me is like 50% of why I'm always voting for Trump. And if he can't come through with this, then to me it's just like you're just another Republican. You're just like Bush. You're just like I don't know, any of the other ones that came before. I mean, I'd be completely unimpressed. And as of right now, I'm really not happy with it. But it is early, and again, so I have to talk myself down a little bit. It is early. It's only been 60 days. Things could change. It could get better, and I hope it does. I'm still supportive. It's not like I hate Trump now or anything, but I'm just saying, from my limited perspective, I think that this needs to be improved, and I really, really hope to see those numbers go up in the coming months.
And let's take away the number aspect of it. I mean, what about just the general feeling? Like, I mean, I know you live in a specific location in the country. When you walk around outside, or when you go do your day to day, is like, are you affected by the fact that, like, do you feel the effects of the illegal immigration, like, just in day to day life?
It's hard to even yes, I do, but it's hard for me to say, like, to give you a specific example. I mean, I could tell you this. I guarantee you my rent is more expensive, right? Like it's more difficult to buy a house because there are simply more people here who need housing, right? Yeah. I can tell you that when I don't want to say more than that because then I'm going to get canceled. But yes.
No, I get you. Let me add this. Let me add this. When I go down to not when I go down to, it's not a safe thing for me to say, hey, let's go downtown. Like right. that to me, like I've only ever been to one city in the United States that's been like a safe downtown, and that is Boise. But other than that, it's kind of a ubiquitous thing where he's like, oh, we're going downtown. Like, hey guys, let's kind of be careful.
Yeah, everywhere.
In 1920, that is not a thing, right? We're not saying, hey, let's be careful, right? Like
Right.
we just go downtown because that's where everything is. That's where business is conducted. That's where everything is, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's in my mind the downfall of civilization started with, well, several things, and then not civilization, but the United States society started with kind of early 1920s and kind of World War II era and post World War II, and you get the downfall of the cities, right?
Yeah.
And now it's a point where everyone's leaving cities because they don't see the point of living there. I mean, we could conduct a lot of people can make livings not near a city now, right?
Right. Right.
Like you can just make a living like out in the country. And if I was single today, if I was just single and not tied down to a bunch of commitments and stuff, I would live out in the country, maybe in Florida or something like that, just off grid. And then I would just drive to and from a coffee shop and conduct business as needed or whatever. And then just go back to my 5-acre fucking house or whatever that I'm paid for like 40 grand or whatever, and just have my own self-sustainable network. That's what I would do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm locked into the city in some small aspect. I'm going to disconnect from that slowly and surely, but it takes a while to get withdrawing your own consent from that system. And the reason why so many people are kind of fleeing these cities is a lot to do with immigration in my mind.
Yeah.
These people come here and they don't respect they don't assimilate to the culture well, to a point where, hey, we're totally in a situation where it's we're simpatico, you know what I mean? So it's like,
yes.
That's a truth though. That's just a truth that has to be said. It's like, it's not like I don't know. It's not that isn't even controversial in my mind, right? That's not controversial. It's like when I went to visit China, everyone in China spoke Chinese.
Right.
None of them spoke English.
Right.
And you ask yourself, is that even a thing that you should even say? What's your point, Adam? My point is this: are you actually going to go to a country and just not know their language and expect to just that they cater to you?
Of course not.
I mean, we do that.
No.
We do that.
Yeah.
We definitely have that as an option. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a safe haven for people who don't speak
Yeah.
English. They can come here and just we have options.
Right.
There's literally like certain like people in. There's just so much to say about this, but you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. There's a lot I could add to this. Maybe we could
Rumble. Check our Rumble link, and we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is for locals only. You got to pay for the rest of this conversation because
Right.
we got to recoup the money from our lost jobs and our jail time somehow. So,
Right.
Yeah, but I think maybe we could do some deep dive on immigration sometime, because I think there is quite a lot that we could say about that. Yeah, I don't.
And I think it would start with the history of it, right? Like the amnesty that was granted by the best Republican president of all time,
and also just like the philosophy of like, why do we care? Like, why is it important? If is it important that we control immigration, that we keep the country the way it is, more the way it is?
No, and you double click on Poland, for example. It's like that guy unapologetically says, "Yeah, I don't want any Muslims coming into Poland. It's not because I don't want it; it's because my people don't want it." And I promise that's going to be the case. And then when he's pushed back by whatever her name was that got destroyed by Jordan Peterson, she said, "Well, aren't you worried about being racist?" He's like, "Yeah, I am. I don't care about that. I care about my people that voted. This is what they want. We have zero crime from Muslims and stuff. So I don't care." So it's like he's unapologetic about it because he's allowed to be, because that's what he was mandated to do by his people, right? So it's like Massie. That's why circling back to Massie on this, like, he's unapologetically voting no on this because he doesn't have the reverse Trump derangement syndrome, if you will, right? It's like he just does what he says.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that's such a crazy thing, but I guess that's crazy. That's in the
that's what makes you a conspiracy
fringe
theorist, a lunatic. Yeah. You can't go too far outside the Overton window, man. And we got close just now, man. We were right on the edge of the Overton window, bro. We had to end that conversation. We got to move on. To next.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I already did say too much, so we might have to edit some of that out.
I definitely did. Oh, I definitely did. Yeah.
We're probably in fact, you're probably going to see that we edited a little bit of this out, and you're going to have to fill in your own situation. But it's just it's just like that's the situation. It's like that's why, and this is kind of perfectly segue into the censorship like state is like we're not being censored by like law. There's a law that says we can't talk about this, right? We're just being enforced that your neighbor is like now being told by CNN, hey, don't let your neighbors talk about this, that, and the other because it's going to kill your grandma if you give vaccine hesitancy, right? Like that whole term. If you're hesitant to the vaccine, like you're going to kill your neighbor's grandma. So what that happens is you now are scolded for even questioning, hey, is it even safe and effective? You're going to kill my grandma.
Yeah.
Does it cause myocarditis? You're gonna kill my grandma. Is it needed? You're gonna kill my grandma. What is the mortality rate for people below the age of 18? You're gonna kill my grandma.
It's 100% for grandmas. That's for sure.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So that's their whole thing. They shut down, deny, depose, delete, whatever. Right? That's so it's kind of. I mean, I don't know. That's where I'm at with that, and I'm perfectly happy to segue into the Doge situation if you want to. But
Yeah,
I'm disappointed with the whole mass deportation thing, and I'm disappointed with a lot of stuff with Trump. And I
yeah,
don't like these Trump sycophants who are like, it's like I actually, this is why I hate politics, and I'm ranting here, just rambling a little bit, but it's because so much of this is that, hey, I love Trump because I can identify with this whole cult, right? Or
yeah,
hey, I hate Trump because I think I can identify with that cult. I feel like, and everyone must, so many people must say this, but I feel like I'm truly immune to that whole world where I'm saying, hey, Trump said this, that was good. Trump said that and did that, that was bad. Trump did this and that and the other, and that was great. Trump overall is good, I think, for many reasons. Trump
yeah,
underall is bad. Right? So
yeah. Under all,
I can
yeah,
actually say that stuff, and you can
yeah,
too. And I think like
yeah,
so many people become victims of, I have to support everything he says and does, otherwise I'm not, loyal to the whole cause
yeah.
or whatever. So
Well, I'll tell you
I
that
don't know.
the whole the rabbit hole, or like the vortex that I get sucked into when it comes to this is like, I want to believe that things can get better, right? Like in my heart of hearts, I'm optimistic. Like I'm a romantic person. I want to believe, like, yes, we have all these issues in front of us, but we can fix them if we all just come together as a people and hold hands and sing songs. We're going to make the world a better place. I want to believe that. I want to believe that that's true. Now I know that the world doesn't work that way, and but sometimes, what I have to shake myself out of, and I'm pretty good at it, so it doesn't go to this extreme. But what I have to shake myself out of is like, I look at Trump and I'm like, man, he could do it. He's the guy. Like he's got the energy, he's got the momentum, he's got the bases behind him. This is the time. Like he could do this. He could actually fix some of these problems that we have. And then reality sort of enters the picture, and it's like, yeah, he's the guy in some respects, but in many respects he's not the guy. He's Israel's guy, he's AIPAC's guy in many respects, and it's just going to kind of continue down that road with a lot of these things. And honestly, so what I have to do is just sort of manage my expectations. And I mean, I've been critical of Trump through this whole episode, so hopefully it's obvious. Like, yes, I'm fully capable of criticizing Trump and understanding where he's gone wrong. But yeah, like you said, at this moment, I'm still firmly in the camp of I support him. Firmly, it's not even I've not even really wavered from that. It's simply, I'm not super happy with what's gone on yet, but I know for certain that the alternative would have been way, way worse. And there's really not even a Republican right now that had a shot of winning that I would have chosen over Trump, even still to this moment. So, and something we haven't talked about, but I can just briefly touch on, is I think the future of the Republican Party and the conservative movement is still very strong. I think it's awesome. Like the Vice President JD Vance, I think, is somebody that we wouldn't have this conversation about. JD Vance is far more diplomatic. I think he's more shrewd, even though and this is my read of him. Again, I don't know this for sure, but my read is that he's probably to the right of Trump on many of these issues. But he's just so much more diplomatic and like eloquent, that he comes across as reasonable. And well, he is reasonable, but I'm saying he comes across as reasonable compared to Donald Trump. So anyway, I think the future's looking bright, and I'm still supportive of Trump, but overall, I'd have to give mixed results, mixed grades on his progress. But anyway,
Yeah,
we can move on now. So let's talk about Elon and Doge.
we can talk about Doge. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
talk about Doge. And I
yeah,
love that it's called Doge because he initially wanted to call it something else. He wanted to call it government efficiency or government something. He wanted to call it something else, but then people on Twitter said you got to call it Doge. So it's kind of
yeah,
funny.
yeah. Of
And he
course.
did his little Doge pump and dump like a couple of years ago, so it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, with Doge, I mean, we all know, everyone knows what Doge is right now. It's just Department of Government Efficiency, and Elon's coming in and he's being, I guess, tasked by Trump to, hey, let's find inefficiencies and get rid of them. Basically, that's the one sentence thing of what it's supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah,
And so what has been done so far, right? What's been done so far with Doge, and I mean, before we jump into what's been done so far with it, I'm just going to talk about kind of the narrative that I know a little bit about it. Is that even before, because I've got a couple acquaintances in my life that have a term I like to call Elon derangement syndrome.
yeah,
Derangement syndrome, right? So
yeah,
it's like Trump derangement syndrome, but it's like they hate Elon for some reason,
yeah,
and it's interesting because I used to be kind of more of all the CEOs of all the big companies are evil, whatever. I don't care what your name is, if you're Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, you're equivalent, right? But now I can kind of parse the differences, and we already talked about Zuck, and he's already different in his own way. But for me, somebody like a Bill Gates type character, he has done so much evil in this world. I think it's almost unforgivable to a point where it's like,
Yeah.
I can't even understand the man. Like, how do you even allow yourself to do those things? And
Yeah.
I encourage you to do your own research, but I'm only going to talk about a little bit about what he does. It's just even the stuff with like, if you even talk about from a Microsoft perspective, genius business tactics, but when you bury Netscape browser with the way you did it, like, that's a whole thing you did that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So just that alone. But anyway, my point is, a lot of these billionaires are different people, right? So we got Elon Musk, who, and I'm going to say Elon Musk is somebody who I think is more of a benevolent dictator, or not dictator, sorry, a benevolent billionaire. And he's showing that by saying, hey, I'm going to try to save these people from the space station, right? I'm going to rescue those guys because I've got this ship that we've built from SpaceX and stuff. And you bring that up, and you got your Elon derangement syndrome folks who say, well, he only has 4 Tesla patents. He only has 4 patents. And one of them is for the Model X, and it has nothing to do with SpaceX. He said he 4 patents. And so they've got their talking points, and they just are really, really hate this Elon Musk guy because he went from left to right, and that's... I actually don't know. There's no because. I'm not even going to try to explain it. They just hate the guy.
Yeah.
So everything he says is bad. And so that, therefore, they are all saying, he's not qualified to be interfering in our government bloat. He shouldn't be trying to trim the fat of the government because he's not qualified. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you want the government to not be so bloated?
Yes.
The answer is yes, right? Always. Mm-hmm. Do you want somebody to fix that? Yes. Well, why can't Elon Musk do that? Because he's evil.
Nobody voted for him. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So I'm going to start with that, kick it over to you, and kind of get what you think about just Elon in general, and then we can give details about Doge if you want to go into that as well.
So Doge is another one that I'm pretty much withholding judgment on Doge as of the moment. I support the initiative, obviously. I mean, everything you just said. We have government bloat. I'm firmly of the belief that the so-called fourth branch of government, which is the unelected bureaucracy, also known as the deep state, also known as the swamp, this needs to go. I mean, at the very least, it needs to be trimmed, and we need to find the inefficiencies, which I guarantee you are there. And I trust Elon Musk to do that. I mean, who is better for something like that, right? Just think about it from a rational, like, sort of look at the qualifications, right? The guy, whatever you think about him, he is a billionaire. He's runs many successful companies in different kinds of industries. He's a guy who knows how to get things done and how to run an efficient business. And, people argue that the federal government is not supposed to be a business. All right. I mean, I get that, but there are aspects of it that are like a business. I mean, they have a budget, they have a certain amount of revenue, they have goals they need to achieve, right? These are very similar to just any kind of corporation. So why not Elon Musk? I mean, I think he's a perfectly suitable choice for this job to lead this effort. And I mean, if to make it more concrete, look at what he did with X, right? He bought X for some absurd amount of money, totally inflated, and he got in there and he like slashed the staff. He made a number of huge changes to just the budget and to make it more efficient. And X is now more profitable than they were when it was Twitter. They earn less revenue. This is what's interesting. They earn a lot less revenue because they've been targeted by advertisers or untargeted by advertisers, if you will. Advertisers refuse to use the platform anymore. So they're earning less revenue, but they're actually turning a higher profit simply because he's made it so much more efficient. And in my view, as somebody uses it a lot, I think the platform is a lot better these days. It's more open and there's freer speech. So, I've seen what he's done. I've seen the firsthand the effects of his ability to make things more efficient, and I trust him when it comes to Doge. Now, again, we're still in the early days of this, and this is obviously a massive, massive job. So at the moment, apparently Doge only has about 100 people working there, and they plan to double that to about 200, which in my view is still a pretty small number. It's not a huge staff. They're going to eventually take on every single department in the government, and they're going to figure out where the inefficiencies are, what can be cut. And, they may be, here's the thing, a lot of criticisms I hear about Doge so far is that they're like haphazard. They're kind of just going in with a machete and just slicing stuff off here and there. I'm fully in support of that. I don't have any problem with that at all.
That's not even true, by the way. It's a lot more surgical than that. But as you said, I'm fully in favor of that as well. I don't even.
Yeah, no, you made a great point. Like I'm sort of conceding that for the sake of argument, but you're right. It's really not even like that. But my view is, like, even if it was, I'm fine with it, because here's the simple fact: if they end up cutting something that turns out to be important, well, that's how we're going to find out about it. All right, this is a classic troubleshooting tactic. Like, if you've ever worked in a job where you have to solve a problem, you start turning stuff off, right? Like, I want to find out what this does. Like, why is this important? Where does this fit into the system? Well, let me just turn it off and see what breaks, right? Like, you do that in troubleshooting. So we're going to do that with the federal government. We're going to turn something off. And if it actually breaks something important, okay, we turn it back on. But we now know what this does. We're gaining information, right? So if you take a hacksaw and you start chopping stuff up, I think that's actually a pretty efficient way, or a fast way to get to the bottom of what really needs to be kept and what can go. So I support the initiative. I'll wrap it up really quick. So there's not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, they've made some significant cuts, but obviously they've got a long ways to go. Elon wants to cut, according to this, but I think this is wrong. I think he wants to cut $1 trillion, is what I believe. I believe he thinks we can cut $1 trillion just from fraud, waste, and abuse. So this is not even
from the spending, from the yearly spending
deficit. Yes, from the deficit, he believes we can cut $1 trillion, which is half of what the deficit is. So that would be massive. It would be a huge improvement. But whether he'll get there or not, I don't know. But I'm withholding judgment. So that's where I stand on that now.
No, and I like you bring up Twitter as an example of something that he did. To me, Twitter was a $44 billion purchase of free speech, not a purchase of. He's not purchasing Twitter to say, hey, how do I increase my net worth? Let me buy Twitter. No, he did not say that, right? He said, hey, I need to put a stop to this censorship situation, so I'm going to pay $44 billion to donate. I'm donating to the cause of free speech. And it happens to be generating a little bit more profit nowadays than it was before, but it never was a profitable company. It was just it was never like a super profitable company, right? It's more like a platform and stuff. And he actually got that done, and in my mind, that's a donation, right? You could call that to the Republican Party, but that's more of to the Constitution, right? And if that's how much it costs to pay for free speech, like, hey, we'll get it done. I mean, that's why in my mind I said earlier benevolent. And it's not benevolent, but it's more benevolent than you got like the Bill Gates of the world, who's actively trying to suppress free speech and trying to, test vaccines on, Africans, etc. So we'll go into that later, or not. I mean, you just do your own research, but it's just. This is what I'm saying. This is kind of evil stuff. It just makes my blood boil when I think about the kind of crap that Bill does. Bill Gates, that is. But so Elon Musk, and I think this is a good litmus test for you guys, is if you think that, if you know that something is a smear campaign and you agree and you're still in favor of even their smeared version of it, just like what Dean said, hey, when I corrected him, I said, well, that's not even true, and he doesn't even care, right? Because he's okay with that version of it. So that means that their smear attempt isn't even going to work, because you'd be okay with the radical version, the straw man of what's real, of what's going on, right? You see what I'm saying? So that means they're so off the mark when they're criticizing him that they don't even understand what what you want, right? Yeah. So it's like, well,
that's a common. This is semi-unrelated, but I just want to bring this in. That is a common problem with liberals, actually. And this has been shown in like studies. Liberals and left-wingers actually are very often incapable of forming what's called a theory of mind for their opposition. So what you'll find is that the conservatives, so Tony and I would call myself conservative. I know what the liberals believe. I know everything about it. I know their foundation of their worldview. I know what policies they would support as a result of that. I know what policies they're going to push. I know what they're going to push against from my perspective. I know that. I don't even need to talk to them. I just know what it is. I mean, I would talk to them, but I'm just saying I can predict it. The reverse is actually untrue, and you'll find this out if you talk to a liberal. They don't know. It's not that they are in bad faith or they're just being argumentative. They genuinely can't explain to you what you believe. But the reverse. So it doesn't work both ways. But that's unrelated. But I just thought that I'd work that in because of.
No, and that's a good point. If you ever have somebody that's debating you, and they just ask them to repeat back your argument, just say like, "Hey, repeat back what my argument is." And if they don't even, if they can't, which they can't do most of the time, if they can't repeat back to you what you're arguing, like there's no point to continue the conversation, because they're not in good faith. They're just saying, hey, I think, you're, and this is actually another thing I'm going to bring up now. These people that are a lot of these ethical evangelicals, if you will, somebody that says like, let's say veganism, and let's use that as an example because it's not that politically charged. So veganism, for example, right? People are vegans that are truly like I really feel bad when I see animals get hurt, so I want to just abstain from, giving dollars to that whole industry. So I'm just going to eat, plant products, etc.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quietly do that, and I'm not going to be an evangelical about it. Those people actually care. Okay, they actually care about animals in a weird way, like not a weird way, just a different way than I do, because I don't have that same immediate. Oh my god, I don't have that same empathy that they do for animals, right? Mm-hmm. And I respect that. That's their thing. I get that. Hey. But the people that 99% of vegans are not that. They are insecure in their own journey to spiritual morality with respect to animals. They're not quite there yet, but they think that they should be there. So what they do is they go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, etc., the Skinner boxes of the world, and they say to other people, you need to do what's right. You need to be like vegan. You need to support animal rights. You need to this, that, and the other. And what that is that's them saying, I feel bad that I'm not doing this. So let me first start by telling everyone else to be a vegan, right? And so why that's important is that if you hear somebody that's saying, hey, you need to do an insert X ethical high ground situation, that person is probably not practicing that themselves. They're really insecure, and they're the cause of, in my mind, political violence, because that is what we call political anger, and that leads into political hate, and then that leads into political violence, which leads into war. So this kind of slowly starts the pipeline of, hey, I'm going to pretend I'm mad about something because I've been told to, be a better person, and I'm lacking that. So let me tell everyone else first. And then that's where you get this whole back and forth about, racism, transphobiaism, homophobia, all this stuff that is not, in my mind, real. And the people that are keeping it alive are the people that are complaining about it. So kicking it back over to you in a way that's not related to Doge at all, but is there something that do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying with this kind of like, these racisms and stuff? Is this stuff that's only really being kept alive because of the people that are complaining about it? Or is there a lot of it that's so real that people are actually affected by it, and that's what's happening?
Well, I would put it this way. It only exists because of the people complaining about it. That's how I would put it. My view on this is that everybody prefers their in-group, right? That's a fact. The fact, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, any time across all of history, people prefer their in-group to varying degrees, right? And I won't get too specific on this, but that's a fact. People prefer their in-group, and it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. There's actually nothing wrong with that, right? Like if you go, so I will get specific on this because I think it's uncontroversial. But if there's a black family, and they want to host a barbecue, and they invite all their black friends, and it's just a bunch of black people there. They're having fun because they're all black and they all understand each other. They'll have they're the same culture. They like the same style of humor. They like the same music. They all have the same kind of stories. They're sharing with each other. They're engaging in the things. They like the same kind of food. They're cooking the food that they all like. They're engaging in something that makes them all happy together, right? What's wrong with that? Why would I look at that and say this is bad? Because there's no white people, there's no Asian people here, so therefore this is bad. I don't look at that as bad. I think good for them. I'm glad they're having a good time. Great. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Now here's where it gets crazy. If I had a barbecue and I had a bunch of white people and we're listening to more white artists, we're eating white food, whatever you think that is, it doesn't matter. We're enjoying white things, but it's just all white people. Okay. Now you'd have the reverse. A social justice warrior or some academic would look at my undiverse, and by the way, I've said this point before, but diverse just means less white people. So they would look at my party and say it's not diverse enough, and therefore it makes them uncomfortable, right? They might even accuse us of being racist just because of the fact that it's just a bunch of white people together, right?
Right.
So my point is, I don't see the all black party as bad. I don't see an all Asian party as bad. I don't see an all white party as bad. I see them as, and I'm not talking political parties, that could be clipped easily. No, don't do that. I'm talking like an actual party. Yeah, I don't see these as bad. I think it is fine. I think we have different cultures, and I think you should preserve the culture that you're in, that you're a part of. It's your job to preserve that. Nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to do that for you. If you care about your people, if you enjoy your people, if you enjoy the things that they've invented and the things that they hold dear and their style of humor and the way they speak and the things they care about, if you enjoy those things, you must preserve it, and nobody else can do it for you. So back to your original question, what's called racism, only exists because people speak it into existence. Just because I prefer a group of white people because I'm white, I'm a white person, and just because a black person prefers a group of black people, that is not racist. That's just us being ourselves. It's an expression of who we are internally.
Right.
No, we don't have control over that. I'm not going to call the black people racist because they prefer to be around black people. I'm not going to do that. It's not racist in my view. It's just the way they are. Same with me.
Right.
Period.
Now let me push back a little bit on that. When you and just to see where this goes. So you're saying that, and I hear you, and I agree with a lot of what you said. But if you're saying that, let's see the hypothetical that you gave, right? What if they're not only just preferring black people at their party, but what if they won't allow other people in the party? What are we talking about as far as that? Is that racist, or is that something that's different little box?
I still wouldn't call that racist. No, because I think people have their preferences. If you again, I think that the least controversial way to put it is to talk about the black people, unfortunately. But like if there's a black party, and I'm like, hey guys, can I join? And I'm dressed like this. I'm like, hey,
right.
Can I join, guys? And they're gonna be like, nah, we're kind of just gonna keep it to ourselves. I'm okay with that. I'm like, sure, no problem. Like I don't view that as racist just because they're not allowing
that's a thought. That's a great thought experiment. But I mean, I know you have black friends and stuff. I know you personally, so I know that like you're able to. This is like one of those things where it's like, if anybody from any color, like you're able to be friends with anybody from any color. So it's like those people probably wouldn't say that to you, right? You wouldn't have to ask if you could come into the party. You'd just be like, hey, you're invited. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I see you're okay with the thought experiment of it, but that's all it is a thought experiment, right? And what you're doing, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is you're creating the best version of what the people on Twitter are actually arguing about, right?
Yes.
But in reality, that doesn't actually happen, is my point. My point is none of that actually happens. I don't think there are mass people saying, hey, you can't come over to my house because you're XYZ immutable characteristic.
Right.
Except like trannyism, and that's fine because that's, we'll talk about that. But the race, the thing about race in my mind, and I want to hear if you can echo with this or jump in and relate to this, is that I see more people from not the race that, I see people from a different race talking about that race as being oppressed more than the race itself. So when I'm saying from my anecdotes, if I go on Twitter, if I go on Reddit, Facebook, social media, or in real life, if I talk to some of my friends from different groups and different backgrounds, etc., the people from, let's say, the Chinese people that I know, they don't talk about racism at all, almost at all, right? But then I hear other people sometimes say, hey, it's actually racist if you say long time no see because that's, that's making fun of Chinese accents or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I know more, I'm part Chinese in some small way. I'm not ethnically Chinese, but culturally speaking, I'm a little bit Chinese. I mean, it's hard to explain that, and we'll get into that later. But I know a lot about Chinese history and Chinese culture to know that, and a lot of people from China, they don't actually care about racism that much because China's an ethnostate, so they don't think about race. You see what I'm saying? It's one of those counterintuitive things where they're actually an ethnostate, so they're not racist.
Yes.
So riddle me this and spit on that if you can a little bit.
Yeah, I'll hawk Tua on that thing real quick. Yeah. No, I mean that's
that's staying in. We're not editing this out. We're not editing this out.
Yeah, whatever we do with this conversation, that one's staying. Yeah, but no, I mean that's the point I tried to make. I mean, you illustrated it maybe a little better, but the racism comes from the noticing of by calling things racist. That's why racism exists, because you call natural human behavior, you refer to that as racism, and that speaks it into existence instead of just acknowledging the reality that we have different racial groups with different preferences and interests and personalities. Instead of acknowledging that, we take notice of the natural way that people sort of separate themselves, and we call that racist. And I think you made a good point when you said that the people who complain about racism against any kind of minority group are generally not of that group, right? And I think the important reason for that is that a healthy person doesn't want to see themselves as a victim. Like a normal, healthy person doesn't want to be like, oh, I'm a victim of something, right? Nobody wants to think that. So the normal, healthy member of whatever race that they're in is not going to go down that road. They're not going to say I'm a victim of racism. They're going to say, oh yeah, maybe somebody was looking at me funny once, or this maybe I've been called a racial slur here and there, but I'm not a victim. It's just something that happens, right? It's just a life. It's just part of life. And it's the same thing. I'll tell you, if you think that just because I'm a white boy that I've never been like the victim of racism, if you want to call it that, then you're dumb. Of course I have. Of course I've like I've been racially abused because I'm white. I definitely have. And like I don't think about it. It's not like I consider myself a victim of racism on a regular basis. But if you ask me that story, of course it's happened to me. Like it is what it is. That's life. It's just kind of what happens in life. You're attacked sometimes for your immutable characteristics. If you're going to dwell on it and make it like your whole personality, you're sick. Like something's wrong with you. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get over that.
No, and I definitely know that that's part of life, and I understand that like when I grew up, I'd say, for example, in my school, I'd say 80% of us were white in my elementary school, and then the rest were a mix of this, that, and the other. So that's whatever, I can't. It's harder to get bullied if you're in the 80% for that immutable characteristic as a kid. But there's other things you got going on that you can get bullied for, whatever. Yeah. Weight, height, etc. And eye color, hair color, but what happens when I think what you're talking about is when you're an adult and there's certain things, we'll leave it at that. There's certain things you're just not allowed to say or do if you're a certain color, right? But then you kind of get away with that if you're another color. And that depends on the culture. And the reason I bring this up, right, is because it is related to Doge, and this is how it's related. It's related because Doge, in light of recent events, Doge has been hitting a lot of this stuff, and one of those things was a government, we'll call it a government tech company called 18F, and they had to scrape a lot of their DEI stuff recently. They had a Slack bot, and the Slack bot would say, hey, for this government channel, if you use the word guys, so let's say you type, hey guys, can we this, that, and the other, the Slack bot would gently remind you, say, hey, this is a general reminder that word guys is not inclusive. So did you mean to say y'all? Or did you mean to say gang? And I mean, even that one was a little bit offensive, but the point is, I'm pulling this up on my phone here just because I want to give you some examples from this, and that's where I got that a long time no see thing. Yeah. But yeah, I've got friends that are trying to advocate. I guess it's that white guilt syndrome, if you will. They're trying to, or like the white savior syndrome. They're trying to advocate for other like oppressed groups that they're not actually complaining about this stuff, right? Yeah. So it's like, and I'm gonna pull up some of these. This is like available. We'll put a link in the description for this or below the subscribe button. For this empty file, but this Slack bot would say, hey, for example, if you type the word schizo, it would say, hey, can you try to use a different word like difficult or chaotic, right? Because schizo is a term that was derogatory that's associated with mental illness, right? Yeah. So to me, if I said, hey, that's schizo, that's in the same vein, you can't say crazy. Crazy is also one of those, hey, that's right, because that would be a subset. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, if somebody says don't say crazy, and I say, okay, fine, that's schizo, to me, I'm doing less damage, right? Because there's less schizo people than there are crazy people. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Now, I'm looking at it too, by the way. Some of these are just like hilarious. Like you can't say something is like crack because it refers to addiction, right? So that's no,
and I'm sitting there thinking, like, how many times has this happened? Because I work at a tech job. I don't ever say the words like crack. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how often is somebody at your tech job saying, oh my gosh, this new programming stack is like crack? And by the way, why would that ever be a bad thing to say? How is that ever? How is that? Does you really think that guy's smoking crack in the morning and coming into his 9 to 5? Like, is that an issue? Really?
It's absurd. You know what's? This is a good one. Circle the wagons, because this term is associated with savage Native Americans. Okay,
so that's racist. That's actually racist. Their description of it is racist in my mind. Right?
Yeah. We were talking about this the other day, but like. Okay, so the liberal perspective on this is usually much more racist than like whatever they think they're fighting against. Because I guarantee you, and I've gone through my entire life hearing the phrase "circle the wagons," and never once has the term "savage Native Americans" popped into my head. Right?
Ever. Not savage, especially not savage. Yeah,
exactly. Not even one time. But a liberal hears the phrase "circling the wagons," and what pops into their mind is like images of savage Native Americans like scalping people. Like this is how a liberal's mind works, right? That they hear this term and they immediately jump to that. But then they call you racist, right? Because you're saying
circle the wagons for nothing, for no reason.
Exactly.
No, and I think I want to make a point here. And that is this. The point that you bring up is that they are actually kind of injecting racism into your brain as a sense of their own insecurity. And it's
Right.
sort of like to bring things to the red pill perspective. It's like the woman who is unsatisfied with her life, and or with her sex life with her partner or whatever, and she says, "Hey, I'm gonna cheat on my partner with somebody." No, she doesn't say that, but she does it, and then she kind of will then start accusing her partner of cheating. I did, this, that, and the other. It's like you're just doing the liberal playbook of, hey, let me just project my own insecurity into you. Where you're, in my mind, that's weird. That's a sick, weird thing to do. To think about circling the wagons as a savage Native American thing. I'm just curious, like, is there any anecdote of any time ever in history where there was one Native American that said, "Please don't say circle the wagons. That's really disrespectful to me. You're making me think like I'm a savage." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm actually curious. Like, do we want to admit this on camera?
No, don't admit it. I can't. No, it's fine. Yeah, obviously I am Native. But you're asking me like I wouldn't. I don't know, bro. Like, what is probably? Here's the thing. Probably, yeah. There's probably one asshole somewhere, just like in every group.
Grow
of people.
up, dude. Grow the fuck
There's
up.
white people who would do this too, right? Like they're just gonna take offense to like every little fucking thing. Yeah. So I guarantee you, there's some guy out there, and he's probably who the liberals are listening to.
Yeah.
To get this kind of crap, but.
No, and some of these are so stupid, and some of these I've already knew about, like as like kind of talking points. So hey, stop using that term. And one of them is blacklist. Like when I put an IP address on a blacklist, I'm banning that IP address from accessing my server, right?
Yeah.
And then the whitelist is, hey, you're now allowed. Like my default setting is nothing is allowed. If I whitelist your IP address, you can always SSH into my server. Like if you come from that IP address, makes sense. So those are just black and white. Like black and white to me is like on and off. Like if it's off, then you're not allowed access. If it's on, you're in access. So I it's actually such a disrespectful, disgusting, disappointing thing when I hear somebody say, "Hey, by saying blacklist, you're making it seem like black people are inferior." Like, how do you get to that? You have to take, as you said in 2012, you have to take your dirt bike and shoot it over a racist mountain to get to that point where like the liberal is actually doing that. It's like, dude, you're taking what I said and you're making it racist. Like, it's like a Bikram yoga stretch. What you just did, right? That's an impressive little stretch there. Because like, I'm never going to change my language. I'm not going to say whatever allow list. I'm not going to ever say that. I'm never going to capitulate to your bullshit. I don't care what you think. I don't care that you have your insecurity about this. I care about what's efficient and what my verbiage is used, and there's a reason I use it. Blacklist is a term. Whitelist is a term. I'm going to use this forever. Master or slave. That's a thing it's about it's a naming convention for some programming thing where you have a master branch and then every branch below it is a slave branch to that master branch so that you can say, hey, I made some changes to the slave branch. Can we update it with the master set? Yeah. Am I sitting there thinking, oh, slavery is we need to bring back slavery? No, I am not. I'm just talking about the coding, like how it works. And they're literally trying to change it to main and submain and all this stuff. I get it. If you're trying to be, if you're trying to be like a censorship regime.
No, don't even give them that. Yeah, don't even.
Okay, we'll edit that out. I'm just saying, for me, it's so frustrating because I'm used to just typing in, git push master or git pull master, and then I have this prompt that says your branch is actually called main, and then I have to do 9 or 10 different steps to change it back to master, and I'm like, dude, at what point is this going to lead to a Mario and Luigi situation, a Mario Bros situation, right? Like,
I'm blanking on what you're. I don't know. I don't get it.
I'm glad you don't, because we're. Well, that's good.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Luigi? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I see all the comment section of all these. Like, recently, the culture is so crazy with all the comment section on some of these YouTube videos. They're saying, "Oh, I can't. Mario Bros needs to come to this country." Like that's what they're saying. Like, "Oh, the Mario Bros needs to happen to this company or whatever." I'm like, dude, that's toxic. That's really toxic.
That's toxic.
I really do think that's toxic. So that's kind of like my joke was saying, like, okay, at a certain point, people are going to get fed up with this, and there's going to be a quote unquote a Mario Bros happening, but. I don't know.
Well, it's the effort is to control your language and to control your speech, and really more than that, it's to convince you that your very thoughts are evil, right? Like when you say the term white and blacklist, again, in my life, I've never once thought of black people and white people when I'm talking about whitelist and black. Never once. It has nothing to do with that in my head. And that's how language works, by the way. Like I can already predict the argument. I've never read anything about this, but I can tell you exactly what the argument is. The argument is that language subtly shapes your thoughts in certain ways. And so therefore, if we sort of make more inclusive language, then your thoughts will also be more inclusive. So this is like how you have a built-in sickness of racism that's just there when you're born. And this is how we cure it. We're going to mold you. We're going to fix you. This is your medicine. So just take your medicine, change your words, and that's your... Okay, that's false. That's a lie. That's not how language works, actually. And you can just test this by just thinking. Just use your brain. Like when you use a word, there's a certain association with that word. And in fact, in your mind, they're actually the same thing. So when I say the word blacklist, it has nothing to do with anything except a blacklist, right? And it can't. Right. It actually cannot. Right. Like that's what a word is. It refers to the thing. And in your brain, they are exactly one and the same. There's actually no way to really separate them. The only way to separate them really is to come up with another term and then use that one, right? Which is what they're trying to do. But my point is it can't possibly be racist for me to talk about blacklist, because I can't simultaneously say the word blacklist and also have in mind whipping slaves, in the chattel. I can't possibly do those two things. That's not how language works in your brain.
No, that's not
Think
how it
about
works
it.
for you.
Yeah, it just doesn't do that. So anyway, just debunking that argument, pre-firing it, because I guarantee you.
And as a child, I was already awake to this concept of they're trying to change my language, even as a child. For example, when I was elementary school, maybe even middle, if they said don't say black, say African American, right?
Yep.
And so that doesn't, to me, that's not the same thing. Black is not equal to African American. Look at Elon Musk, right? So it's like, to me, I'm just thinking that's a misnomer. Why are any black people offended by being called black?
No.
In context, yes. In some contexts, I get that. But as a way to just quickly identify, hey, 6'2", black male, heavy build, right? How is that offensive? You're just describing the person.
Yeah.
5'9", white male, bearded. What's wrong with describing?
How could it be?
But then, as a middle school, they're saying, "Oh, you can't. Don't say African American. Say Caucasian." Right. I'm not going to extra syllables so that you. Who is this hypothetical person that's offended? It's not me. It's not you.
Right.
And I don't care about you if you're offended. Just turn the channel off. If you're
close
offended.
your eyes.
Just get over yourself. It makes me sick. My blood has been boiled this entire episode, dude. I really wish I could talk about something positive at all. Honestly, it's such a sad thing.
Honestly, these stories, there's not a whole lot positive. I don't know. We covered a lot. Everything else is also slightly depressing. So we've been going for almost 2 hours. You want to call it there? Or do you
We'll end it on one good note, and that is Ross Ulbricht.
Okay.
I'll do a little quick one on Ross Ulbricht and kind of ask your thoughts. But this gentleman, for those of you who don't know, Ross Ulbricht was the leader of the founder of the Silk Road, which is a darknet site that was made, I don't know, 2010 maybe, or a little bit earlier, where people could go on there and kind of be anonymous and trade and buy and sell whatever they want, but happen to be a lot of illegal stuff, fake IDs, substances, what have you. Leave it at that. He ended up getting arrested in 2015 with a RICO statute, which was kind of what they used for Al Capone. That's kind of style for gangsters. But they put him in prison for life without parole, and everyone saw that case and was like, hey man, he didn't really deserve life for that. That's just something he maybe a couple of years. He did some wrong stuff, but he didn't actually sell all that stuff that was on there. He just hosted the website, whatever. So basically, a lot of people in the last 10 years that are on the third party ballot have always promised, hey, I'm gonna free Ross Ulbricht. Let's just throw that in there. They throw that in there because that's outside of the Overton window, so I think that can get votes and just differentiate them from right and left because it's outside of it a little bit. Now, RFK was running as an independent, quote unquote, because the Democratic Party did not offer him Secret Service, even though his uncle and his dad were assassinated. So it's he said, okay, I'm going to be an independent. And on his website, he had Ross Ulbricht. I'm going to pardon Ross Ulbricht. That was on his website. And then you have Dave Smith. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast and said, hey, Joe, listen, I know you just talked to Trump yesterday. You have a line on Trump. If you can, tell him to pardon Ross Ulbricht because he's somebody who's kind of doing a prison sentence who shouldn't be, right? So I woke up one day and I saw a little thing on my news thing saying, hey, Ross Ulbricht has been pardoned. I didn't even know that Trump knew who this guy was. So it's that actually is a good thing that he did. He pardoned Ross Ulbricht. I've been wanting this to happen for 12 years. Ever since I knew about the case, I'm like, hey, why is this guy doing life? So kind of a weird, obscure thing, but yeah, he did do it. So what are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I agree that I think the sentence was overly harsh. I don't know that. My initial sense is that he probably deserved to go to jail. I mean, here's the thing. Technically, what he was doing may have like skirted the edge of like what's legal and illegal. I mean, I know he dipped into much more overtly illegal actions, but just in terms of like, hey, I own a website and people are using the website to talk to each other and maybe organize illegal activities. Like, are you then considered like a kingpin, right? Which is how he was charged under the RICO Act. That's how they charge. Like the origin of the RICO Act was like, you have the leader of a drug organization who themselves is not necessarily doing any crimes, right? Like they're not the ones out on the street dealing drugs. They're not the ones who are, doing mob hits or whatever. So they needed a way to actually prosecute somebody who's in charge, but not necessarily doing the things. So does that really fit the spirit of what Ross Ulbricht was doing? I don't think so. Not really. Like he was not actually the leader of any kind of drug organization or anything like that. So that to me, it was an abuse of that statute. And in that respect, I'd say he probably does not deserve anywhere near like a life sentence. I think that was crazy. But he was doing something that I think he reasonably should have known was like dark. I mean, he's using the dark web, and he knows that he's facilitating illegal activity. He knows he's facilitating the sale of illegal drugs. He knows he's doing that. He was not blindsided by any of these things. Like he knows that's what's going on. So I'm fine with him receiving like jail time, getting punished. But yeah, I think that the life sentence was a little crazy. And what did he end up serving? Like, does it even say here?
12 years. Or
12 years.
10 years. 10 years. I think.
Okay.
He was convicted in 2015.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right to me. Like, given what he did, 10 years seems like a fairly reasonable sentence. I think that's fair. So the fact that he was pardoned now after serving 10 years, I'm actually okay with that. I think justice was done, and I think he deserves now to earn his chance to rejoin society.
Right. And I just think it's interesting that Trump was able to get that done because I don't see Trump as somebody who knows about Ross Ulbricht. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it had to be. It might have been that pipeline that I just described. It might have been Dave Smith to Joe Rogan to Trump. It might have been that. Yeah. It might have been RFK because RFK had it on his website. Yeah. Could have been RFK.
But can I ask you this? Why is it that libertarians care so much about this? Why do they care about Ross Ulbricht so much?
Well, part of it is that Ross Ulbricht himself was a libertarian. And a libertarian insofar as, hey, I'm going to make a platform for people to do what they want to do freely without being spied on by the government, and they can just do it and then just let it autopilot, right? Yeah. And so libertarianism is kind of a, hey, we don't need government involved in this. We have our own agency. We should be able to do victimless crimes. Like what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Crossing the street is a victimless crime, like it's jaywalking, but you're you know what I'm saying? There's no victim, no crime. So that's the whole libertarian thing is like selling heroin is a victimless crime in their mind. Although I don't agree with that because the victim is the person the rest of the society who has to deal with that person who's now addicted to heroin. So I get that as a counter argument, but that's their general kind of scheme of it. So that's kind of why I think a lot of libertarians are like, hey, let's get rid of this guy's jail time. But from a broader sense, it was, if you look at it, it was, as you just said, it was in my mind way, way, way overbalanced. And they threw the book at him as a way to make an example out of him. And they tried to entrap him into ordering hits and a lot of crazy stuff they try to do to him. So it's like, I don't know, man. To me, it's interesting that Trump was able to get this done. So
yeah, it is interesting. And I my sense is he probably used it as a bit of a bargaining chip to like sort of win the libertarian vote, which I'm okay with. I mean, like I said, in my view, justice was done here. And I think it is worth, as you said, we're sort of had a lot of fairly depressing conversations. So this one's a little more uplifting. Hey, justice was done, and somebody who was sentenced to life in prison, probably unfairly, is now out. And hey, good. That's something. That is something.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's going to be it for today, guys. We did cover a lot, so if you like what you see, like the video, comment on the video to talk about, just we'll create some arguments with you guys, especially about that Ukraine stuff at the top. Neil, if you're watching, comment on the video and then subscribe to the channel for more. We're going to be giving you guys weekly updates. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for watching, guys.